This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 3 minutes after 10. The royal family has one job. Sorry, I was a bit profound. Good morning. Speaking of one job, am I the only one thinking about Rachel Reeves' husband from the perspective of being a slightly feckless husband? By feckless, I mean not very good at the detail. He's a senior civil servant, but I know exactly what he's been through over the course of the last 24 hours. Okay, darling, you're definitely across this, right? You're handling all the rental stuff. Yes, look, I'm 53 years old. Oh, I don't know how old he is, actually, but quite close to home. I'm 53-year-old. Stop treating me like a child. I can handle a flipping house rental, for goodness sake. Then he got a phone call, presumably, on Monday night or Sunday night. I said, darling, did you actually sort out all of the house rentals? And he has spent 24 hours desperately searching through his email history because he was certain that he had done, but he couldn't find the proof. And it turned out that the bloke who said they were going to apply for the licence left the letting agency the next day. I don't see any topic here. Sorry, Daily Mail. I know you think it's more important than an actual prince of the realm losing his title, because that is what you've chosen to splash with this morning. Your kind of rapidly deflating balloon of manufactured fury regarding the Chancellor's housing arrangements. But at this point, I can't see any phone-in that would add to what we did yesterday when we described what we thought had happened and what turned out, which doesn't always wash out this way, it turned out had happened. If you think I'm wrong, let me know. If you've got a good way back into that story, then I'll give you the money myself. 5 minutes after 10 is the time. So Andrew stripped of Prince title. We will be joined by the hero of the hour, if that is the correct turn of phrase, in about 11:45, I think, today. We'll talk to Emily Maitlis, who, of course, set the ball rolling on the story of our age, the royal story of our age. I've also got a little bit of a tease for you with regard to who will be the... See, I had a conversation with the producer earlier. I thought I'd already told you who the special guest was going to be for Full Disclosure Live next year, raising money for Global's Make Some Noise. It's quite exciting. It's what you might call a crossing of the streams for certain sections of our society. And don't let me go home without remembering to tell you who that is and to tell you how you can get hold of tickets. Will we be telling people how to get hold of tickets? Yes, and telling you how to get hold of tickets as well. But how do you want to do this, do you think? I mean, it is very rare that every newspaper is united in complete agreement about what the biggest story in town is. And it's so rare, in fact, that it's not even true today. It's almost every newspaper. The Andrew, formerly known as Prince. Yeah, well done, the son. We beat you to that as well. King removes style, titles and honours from brother. Andrew stripped of Prince title in historic move to save monarchy. I like that line. Historic move to save monarchy. Finally, says the Daily Mirror, King begins the process to strip Andrew of Prince title. He's ordered to leave Royal Lodge and Fergie's out too. Wills backs Charles's move amid yet more Epstein fallout. Royals say thoughts are with victims of all abuse. An important addendum to the central announcement yesterday, I thought. The royal formerly known as Prince, says the Daily Star. Andrew no longer Prince, says the Daily Telegraph. Andrew to be stripped of his royal titles and must move out of home, says the Guardian. Andrew stripped of his Prince title and home, says the Times. Humiliation for Reeves as she changes her story, says the Daily Mail. Sometimes I wonder whether I'm exaggerating about how bonkers everybody in that building has gone. But no, I'm not. I mean, it is on the front page as the kind of turn to page 2. But deciding that the biggest story in town is their rapidly deflating balloon of manufactured fury about Rachel Reeves is, even by the standards of the Daily Mail, a moment of well, I mean, they've put the word humiliation in red, which seems to be a fairly reliable example of what I believe is called projection. Humiliation for the Daily Mail. As it turns out, Rachel Reeves had done nothing wrong, but that won't stop them from printing page after page after page of desperate attempts to portray her as some sort of wrong-un while paying Boris Johnson, who, of course, had 2 independent ethics advisors resign in disgust at his contempt for ethics, hundreds of thousands of pounds a year to write a newspaper column. I think that's the line I like most. What are you thinking the big story? What's the big element? What's the most important aspect of this? Or shall I ask you that question on air? Do you want to ring up and tell me the answer? What's the most important aspect of this story for you? Because I don't think you know. I don't mean that in a rude way. I just mean that I don't know what is the most important aspect of this story. Obviously, in the great scheme of things, we'd love to live in a country where victims are the most important element of stories like this, but spoiler alert, we don't. Even with the grooming gang inquiry we have seen this week, 5 survivors, 5 people on the panel, calling for an apology from Nigel Farage for making their plight worse, while Lee Anderson has decided that they should all have to sit down with him and convince him that their suffering is relevant or that their suffering is authentic enough to be included in the inquiry. 2 utterly despicable men, one of whom has turned his attention to disabled people this week. So, sadly, public discourse, the establishment, call it what you will, the national narrative does not prioritise victims. If it did, then at the moment that 12 million quid was handed over to a young woman who accused the Queen's son of having had sex with her in return for money she received from Jeffrey Epstein, then this decision would have been taken at that moment. It's perfectly possible, because of course he denies all allegations, it's perfectly possible that he gave 12 million quid to her for no reason whatsoever, apart from entirely unfounded allegations. But it seems, I think we could all agree, unlikely. In the great scheme of things, who here has given a significant sum of money to somebody to stop them making entirely false and unfounded allegations? Hands up. That's all. I'm just saying, he denies it all, but he hasn't really explained why he's given her 12 million quid of his late mother's money. So what do you think the most important element of this story is? 0345 6060 973. That's your sort of bubbling under question. That's not the central thrust. How much trouble... Here's a double header for you. Right, pause, rewind, think. How much trouble is the monarchy in? My answer to that is not a lot. I think, whether you're going to file it under better late than never, or whether you're going to file it under doff cap tug forelock, he's the king. Therefore, can we all please move along and stop asking why action wasn't taken much sooner? I mean, even as recently as a fortnight ago, he made what he hoped would be the final move in this saga, and it turned out to be not enough, too little and too late. How significant is this for the monarchy? My answer is not very, but I want to know what your answer is. How significant should it be? Am I alone this morning in thinking that this, not unlike the aftermath of the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, is one of those moments when you realise that the entire edifice is vulnerable? It's so bizarre to grow up with something utterly baked into the national consciousness that is entirely and demonstrably optional. I'm not a particularly Republican individual. I think, and I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I think my attitude to the royal family is going to be defined by its inhabitants rather than by any reverence for an institution or tradition. I think I won't feel any particularly Republican stirrings in my guts if the people in the big jobs are behaving with what appears to be decorum and or decency. I don't know that you can say you were fond of the late Queen, although of course a lot of people do, but I thought she was brilliant at what she did. Which of course leaves me open to the question of what did she do, James? And I don't know the answer to that question either. She provided focus, leadership of sorts, a sort of fulcrum for feelings, whether they're patriotic feelings or national pride or something else, pageantry, tradition. What did she do? I mean, that's odd, isn't it? She did her job very well. She was brilliant at her job. What was her job? I think King Charles is playing a blinder as well. I thought that he gave the world a lesson in how to deal with the narcissistic man-child Donald Trump. Other countries now have gone further. South Korea gave him a crown, an actual crown. Apparently, Air Force One is flying back from Asia with the hold absolutely groaning under the weight of, well, if we were watching Flash Gordon, they'd be called space diamonds. King Charles, without actually handing over much by way of loot or booty, showed the world how to handle the narcissistic man-child that is Donald Trump. Just treat him like a cross between the Pope and Henry VIII, and he'll go home happy regardless of anything else that's going on anywhere in the world. So, what is today actually about? It's a reminder that all of it is a man-made edifice. The medieval arguments about a divine right of kings or monarchs being appointed by God, I don't think anybody really subscribes to that anymore, and if they do, they are respectfully too bonkers to pay any attention to. So that ship sailed a long, long, long time ago. And what this reminds us of is the very simple fact that it's all entirely confected. The whole shebang. The idea that someone can live in a 30-mansion house for free simply by dint of the fact that a long-distant foreign ancestor slid into an empty seat called a throne at some fortuitous point in history, and his successors and children, grandchildren are dedicated to one thing and one thing only. Because the royal family only have one job, and that is to survive. That's it. The only job the royal family has is to protect the ludicrous system at which they sit at the very top. It's bonkers. And listen, I'm saying it again, not to insulate myself from any particular criticism, but because I mean it. I don't have particularly Republican stirrings in my soul. But on mornings like this, oddly, I go a little bit big picture. I don't really care about Andrew Windsor. I don't certainly intend to lose any sleep about the privations he will hopefully suffer. I don't particularly care about his ex-wife either. I've got a modicum of sympathy. Actually, I've got quite a lot of sympathy for his children. But I don't know them. Maybe they don't deserve any. I go big picture because the more you look at it, the madder the whole business looks. It's extraordinary. So I think what I'm going to ask you today is this. What's the royal family for? 0345 6060 973. I know what they do. They dedicate themselves to surviving long enough to pass all the privilege and pomp on to the next generation. That's the key job. And, of course, you might say, no, they provide this and that and the other, but they provide this and that and the other in order to safeguard the handing on of all the pomp and privilege, all the plunder and riches to the next generation. That is what their job is. They don't have any other job. If they thought that they would enhance the likelihood of passing everything on to the next generation by behaving like Genghis Khan, they'd be behaving like Genghis Khan. Their job is simply to survive. It's what they do. So from our point of view, what is the royal family for? 0345 6060 973. And how does the disgrace, the unprecedented, that's an overused word, but today it really fits, the unprecedented disgrace of Andrew Windsor affect the whole shebang? What impact does this have? Because I don't think it's going to have much impact at all, but I think I'd quite like to be wrong. So what do you think? I mean, you can do it one of two ways. It can be your very personal answer to the question, or you can do what I've done this morning and go a bit big picture. What is the royal family for? And don't think for a minute that you have to be positive in your analysis. You could explain, and I think Prince Harry has demonstrated this better than almost anybody ever. You could explain that the royal family is there to keep us all in our place. The royal family is there to remind us that there are some stations to which you can never aspire. However brilliant you are, however beautiful you are, however talented you are, however kind, however compassionate, however caring you may be, there are some levels of society in this country that you will never reach. It doesn't matter whether you are a walking paragon of virtue, you will never be, until today, the, quotes, equal, end quotes, of Andrew Windsor, the paedophile's friend. So what's it for? What's the royal family for? And What does the disgrace of Andrew Windsor do to the firm, as they like to call themselves, reportedly? 18 minutes after 10 is the time. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. I don't like royal phone-ins, generally, but I'm going to like this one. I'm enjoying already talking about this because, well, it's that dread word again. It's unprecedented. But what's it for? What's the family for? And how does this scandal, this disgrace, affect that mission statement? How much damage has this done to whatever it is they exist to do? It's 10:18.
James O'Brien on LBC.
20 minutes after 10 is the time. I mean, maybe that's the point. You're not supposed to ask what they're for, because the minute you do, you register the ridiculousness of the whole thing. I mean, it takes a friendship and a succession of lies and hideous allegations against a very senior member of the family for most people to recognise that they are not special. Far from it. But if they're not special, why does our country treat them as if they were born better than us? And I don't mean socially better. I mean inherently, intrinsically, innately better than us. I do actually hate that. I got to be honest with you. I've mellowed with age, but I remember when my first daughter was born, and they love Disney princesses. They all love Disney princesses. Everybody loves Disney princesses, some more than others. And I remember thinking, this is really bad. It didn't sort of make me burn the DVDs or rip up the costumes or anything like that. But I do remember thinking, God, I'm teaching my little baby girl to kind of revere a system in which the biggest rewards are reserved for accidents of birth rather than effort or achievement, decency or goodness. And anyway, maybe that's an odd path to go down. 21 after 10. Tim's in Belfast. Tim, what are they for?
But basically, James, I think they're the pinnacle of the system. You're sort of talking about them as if they're in isolation.
Yeah.
But they're the pinnacle of a class system that still exists in the United Kingdom in 2025 that includes the House of Lords, includes hereditary peerages, including...
Well, the House of Lords, hereditary peerages, obviously, but the House of Lords is at least an award for achievement.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd say that, and then you say Michael Gove, don't you, or Daniel Hannan. I mean, it's not, is it? It's just jobs for the boys.
But it's the system itself still exists, and you still have huge swathes of the United Kingdom land. I'm in Northern Ireland. There are huge parts of Northern Ireland that are owned by hereditary peers.
Yes.
But you also have, and you've just touched on it, you have a system that essentially those that support the royal family are saying they believe in accident of birth over merit.
Yes, that is true.
But the whole system that you have with the pinnacle that we revere, if I meet somebody in the royal family, I'm supposed to bow to them. And
would you?
I don't really want to do that.
Would you?
I don't feel that that's particularly conducive. Well, this is the problem with it. Would I have the nerve not to?
I mean, you get an OBE if you do.
Yeah, I'll tell you so. An old friend of mine, years and years ago, was on a +1 at a dinner party that Andrew was at.
Okay.
And she left to go to the bathroom. And on return, his aide took her aside and said that she had disrespected him by not curtsying when she left the table.
That makes me so angry. Why does that make me so angry?
Well, it makes me very angry too. Because why on earth? Because in 2025, the whole of the United Kingdom system revolves around looking backwards. Because you touched on it. It goes back to the time whenever the Germans, took over from Queen Anne, I think it was, or Mary or whatever it was. And the whole thing revolves and keeps the United Kingdom looking backwards. And you look at the system of Parliament, it's absolutely archaic, but it's all tradition. Everything is driven by tradition, rather than chucking the whole lot out with the bathwater and saying, this is a modern age we live in. How on earth can you still have Prime Minister's question time with people baying at each other?
Don't drift too far. I know you're making sense.
This all comes from the same system.
Up to a point, Lord Copper. I don't know that the PMQs quite fits into the analysis.
You start with Black Rod banging the doors. You start with the Queen going in and reading, or the King now reading the the government's statement of activity. I mean, it's absolutely farcical. And yet people buy into this, that I'm a second-class citizen because I wasn't born with this theoretical ability. And I think that's the thing that the story about Andrew will do. And maybe it'll make more people think, you know what, they're just exactly the same as us. There are flawed people, and there are ordinary people, and there are people with all of the advantages they have had that they make no benefit. I mean, we look back to the king, and you'll probably get chucked. I'll get chucked. The king who is being lauded for getting rid of Andrew is the same king who was essentially carrying on an affair on the day he got married. And
I don't know if it was. I think it may have started a little later, didn't it?
A little later, but he was the head of the church that was supposed to set out the moral standards, and now he's being lauded. And the BBC, Nick Robinson, was talking as if Andrew was dead. He was so sort of hushed in his tone, and oh my goodness, isn't this, that, and the other?
Well, he's had throat cancer, I think. I mean, he might have been hushed. For medical reasons.
He's not the only one.
No,
he's not the only one. Okay. But it's it's a modern age. But Britain never looks forward anymore. It always looks back to what.
So how big a deal do you think this will be? Because what you've reminded me of is that a fracture, a tiny fracture, can be invisible, and yet years later it can cause the entire thing to fall apart. Do you think Do you think this might actually be? Because a lot of people thought that the palace's response, the Queen's response to the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, was an existential moment, and I agree. But goodness me, they've pulled off that rehabilitation in extraordinary fashion. Do you reckon this is on the same sort of scale of potential importance?
They start to add up. I don't think, I think that's my view. I think this could be just another addition. But whenever you look at what happened with Camilla becoming queen, when everyone had said after Diana's death, there's no way she can become queen. And then because of the media coverage, because of the, and the award system is pretty handy. Whenever you chat to the king and you say, well, actually, you know what, all the people who are hereditary peers are quite happy with the way the system works, and they're worth X billion pounds. The Duke of Westminster, So this is what they do.
They kind of represent that. I want to get a perfect analogy, Tim. You know how I like analogies. They're kind of like a. Someone else will come up with a better way of explaining this. But they're the thing that you focus on when you're looking at epic, unjustifiable hereditary privilege and wealth. I always like the old Duke of Westminster's line when someone asked him for financial advice, and he said, my advice to you would be to have an ancestor who was best friends with William the Conqueror. Well, I can chuckle about that, but really it should have steam coming out of all of our ears. Whether you're looking at the reports today about the most deprived areas of this country, or whether you're reflecting on the cost of living crisis or homelessness or whatever it may be, and you've got this relatively small number of people who for 1,000 years, them and their families have been essentially treating the British population like a crop that they reap routinely in order to amass ever greater riches and ludicrous wealth and advantage. And somehow the royal family, it's probably the biggest PR success in the history of humanity, or certainly in the history of the Western world, that you have this one family who are so revered and respected and admired and loved that they are the bulwark, if that's the right word. They're the reason why we never question any of it. Because you say, someone will ring me and say, "Oh, I'd rather have a king than President Farage or President Blair." To which you could, well, no, I'll wait until someone rings in and says that before I use up all my top lines. But that's the point, isn't it? Is that you never say, "A bloke round the corner from me, the Duke of Northumberland, owns shed loads of Brentford." Why? What's that about? How does that even work? A Duke of Westminster you've mentioned, all sorts of people, even the street names tell us. It's insane. You can never have a fully functioning democracy while you've got this baked-in aristocracy, this baked-in wealth and privilege, and they pay, of course, less in inheritance tax than you and I will if we're lucky enough to inherit anything from our parents in percentage terms. But the royal family are the safeguard. What's the word? There's a word that I want, Tim. There's a word, and I can't think what it is, but that's what they do, isn't it? They're the kind of firewall. They're the firewall on privilege.
Yeah.
That's it. We've done it. That's it. Don't speak. Don't say anything else. They're the fire. That's what they're for. They're the firewall on institutional, epic, even lethal. When you look at the fact that poverty can kill, they are the firewall that protects lethal inequality. So why do we put up with it? 0345 6060 973. And how big a deal? Tim, there's a brilliant call from Tim, as you'd agree. But it does leave open that question of, do you reckon if it's a Ming vase that successive monarchs have carried across the proverbial ice rink and someone pinged it after Diana, Princess of Wales, died, and it looked like there was a fracture in it, but they took it to the repair shop, and one of those geniuses used some Gorilla Glue and gave it a little polish and fire. Now it's as good as new. You wouldn't even know it had been fractured at all. How big is this fracture? 0345 6060 973. Simon Conway has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
33 is the time. What is the royal family for? 0345 6060 973. What is it for? And what has Andrew Windsor's disgrace done to it and also that role, that mission? What is it for? Best we got so far? It's a firewall to protect the epic privilege. And of course, you know, they're all in it together. You watch a coronation or a royal funeral and all these people, these dukes and earls, they've all got jobs. They all trace their lineage back to pretty much the Doomsday Book, or possibly in some cases beyond. And their only job is to make sure they get to hand on that nonsense to the next lot. You know why I love trees? Or you know why I think of trees at moments like this? I've told you before. It's because if you plant a tree, you're not really, unless it's a Leylandi. If you plant a tree, you're not really planting it for yourself. If you plant a tree, and that for me is one of the biggest indicators of class in this country. If you're a farmer, this is a little different because, of course, you expect to hand on your land to future generations, but most of us don't. If you plant a tree, you are expecting it to be reaching its full potential in your grandchild's time, you know? I spend a lot of time in Kew Gardens. It's one of my favourite places in the world. I don't know why I love trees so much, but it's not far from odd. It's far from unique. Loads of people do. But I always think of this idea that none of us have. We want to look after our children. We want to pass stuff on to our children. Most of us do. But the idea that our only purpose on this earth is to make sure that we hand over to our heir as much as we humanly can, ideally even more than we inherited ourselves. Yeah, I visit parts of the country where, because I'm boring, I know that when I park my car, it's going to the local earl. I know that when I see several front doors that are all painted the same colour, it's because they're all owned by the local earl, whose estate manager is responsible for painting front doors. This obscene inequality is protected by the royal family, who have one job, which is to survive. That's it. And I'm not even a Republican, even as I describe all of this. If you got rid of the royal family, would the rest of it fall apart? If the royal family, to recall that beautiful book by Sue Townsend, if the royal family were relocated to a council estate just outside Leicester, Princess Anne does fine, by the way. It's the rest of them that you'd worry about. You relocate the entire royal family to a council estate outside Leicester, as Sue Townsend did, the late Sue Townsend did in a work of fiction. What would happen to all the other aristocrats? What would happen to the... She reads sometimes an obituary in the Daily Telegraph, and it will say, she was a lady in waiting to the Queen Mother. And you think, what does that even mean? She was a lady in waiting to the Queen Mother. So she's a countess. And yet she's got a, quotes, job, end quotes, that involves sitting around and gossiping with a member of the royal family. Nobody, this is really weird, nobody is more attuned to this ludicrous hierarchy than the people who are high up in it but nowhere near the top. Yeah, I did, my last book didn't get reviewed much in the right-wing media, funnily enough, but there was one review in, it only appeared online, the Telegraph, that took me to task for getting the order wrong of earls and counts and dukes. As if that, oh, well, you can't trust a word this chap goes. He thinks an earl is senior to a lord or a duke is senior to a count. I loved that. It's the kind of thing, if it had actually appeared in a newspaper, I'd have cut it out and stuck it up in the downstairs toilet. It's just so indicative of the kind of brain that is so utterly boiled and unquestioning that you think, no, it really matters. It's really important to know where this is. And I'll tell you who would know. An earl knows exactly where he's supposed to be standing in a line compared to a duke or a duke's son. I mean, what? And yet it's so baked into our society that the response of most of us is to doff cap, tug forelock. One of the saddest things about the time I've spent, I don't know if it's appropriate to tell you exactly where, but if you listen closely to the programme, you know what my favourite haunts are across the country. So you're staying in a little village that is owned by a local earl, pretty much owned, right? And the way that some of the residents there speak about the earl is extraordinary. They speak about him as if he is a cross between the Pope and Henry VIII. There is a level of deference that you rarely encounter in the wild, but it is utterly normal. These people live with their forelock tugged. Their cap is permanently doffed. And then if you are, I don't know quite what the word I'm looking for is, but if you find yourself sitting next to this earl at a wedding, spoiler alert, I have done, perfectly nice chap, utterly ordinary, utterly and completely ordinary. How much of a muppet would you have to be to inherit half a county and not make a success of it? Seriously, you could probably give Lee Anderson half a county and be relatively confident that he'd have half a county left to pass on to his children. How much of a muppet would you have to be? Unless you've got a massive drug habit, or the king needs you to raise an army, which is, I think, the only reason historically why these great estates have fallen or failed. Or you don't produce an heir, of course. God forbid you don't produce an heir. So how much of a muppet would you have to be to inherit half a county and not have half a county left when you shuffle off this mortal coil? And yet we are conditioned and primed to treat these people like I say, a cross between the Pope and Elvis Presley. It is just extraordinary. And I think that's probably all the royal family is for, until you tell me otherwise. 0345 6060 973. Clara is in Teesdale in County Durham. Clara, what would you like to say?
Hi, good morning, James.
Hello, Clara.
I do love listening to you
You're
and
very
everything
kind.
that you're saying.
Oh, thank you.
And there are some things, though, that
You don't like.
I don't think, which I don't like, because I know in a way where it's coming from. But first of all, I would just say that when you asked what's the monarchy for,
Yes.
I believe that the monarchy, that we've had for generations, and it's changing all the time.
True,
I mean, you can't help that. That's changing, and it's because it's not the power, none of the power that the monarchy has, but the power that it denies somebody else. And I'm going to be one of those people you've just mentioned about talking about a republic and a president and what have you.
Okay.
But I do think that's really important, even more so in the political climate that we're in at the moment. And obviously, I think since Queen Elizabeth died, there has been a change. It's been passed on. And you've got King Charles, who, he's in his 70s, so he's of a certain generation. But I have really high hopes for the Prince of Wales and William. And
but there's a problem here. I've got a problem here, and okay, I don't want to shoot you down.
No, that's fine.
But I am about to, because this argument that it's better than the alternatives, I'd rather have him than him, and then we can all come up with someone who we wouldn't want to be president, like I don't know, Jeremy Clarkson. He'd probably be quite fun actually, but people will pick a politician they don't like, whether it's Farage or Tony Blair or President Brown or whatever it would be. If God forbid, Clara, anything had happened to Prince Charles, as he then was, prior to the 21st of June 1982, this man, Andrew, would now be king. And your argument that we need a royal family because I'd rather have King Andrew than King Tony falls apart like the cheapest of suits immediately.
Right. I totally agree with you, But what I'm saying is I think it's much to do with like the institution, the actual individuals and the characters that they have. Because I think, had that happened I don't honestly think Andrew would have lasted long. That would have been a really big, because of the character and how he is.
It's easy to say. I mean, I've given you a hypothetical, and you've given me a hypothetical back, so we're hypotheticaling each other into oblivion. Yeah. What do you get out of it? What do you get out of having a royal family, personally, if that's a fair question?
Okay, right. Well, listening to you talking about privilege,
yes,
and obviously earls and what have you. Here, where I live in Teesdale, we don't have an earl or a duke, but we have a Lord Barnard from Raby Castle. I don't know if you know.
No, I'm not familiar. I don't. Who does know it? I mean, when I was a gossip columnist, I used to read Debrett's, would you believe?
So he goes back, you can link him to the royal family and generations and what have you. Now, we've got a young Lord Barnard, because his father died a number of years ago, and he and his wife have taken it over. And they have done an absolutely, to me, fantastic job in our area of what they've done to Raby Castle and to all you mentioned, having lands and the farms, and the people hire out the tenants and what have you. But,
have they given any of those farms to the farmers?
Some of the farms have been sold off. Yeah.
No. Well, sold, I suppose, it might be a bit much.
But these were tenant farmers.
But you might as well. What's the difference between what you're saying now and having a conversation in 1643?
Because then in 1643, I think you did have more the divine right of kings, and
well, that might have gone, but the privilege hasn't gone. Yeah. I mean, he was. Well, I'm sure he's an absolutely lovely bloke. Yeah. Is that as in Barnard Castle?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm sure he's a lovely bloke, but why has he got all that stuff?
Well, because yes, obviously he's inherited it. But he was brought up, to me, these people...
Not historically why, morally why. Yeah. Why has he got all that stuff? Because and I know that they've just published the areas of greatest deprivation in the country, and the North East comes top.
Yeah, well, because he's inherited it. We've had a lot of talk about inheritance tax, and people were being upset if they can't hand on their £1 million house or what have you to their offspring. I mean, it's... And when you mention privilege, I think privilege works both ways, right? If you say privilege because you're thinking of money and you're thinking of wealth and status, maybe it's just me, but I would not doff my cap to anybody.
But you kind of just did he's a baron, actually, this fellow. You kind of just did to the Baron Barnard.
I'm talking about the institution and what he's done and what he's given back to the community and how he's looked after his inheritance, and he hasn't just...
But that's because he's got one job, and that's to make sure it's all there to hand on to the next generation.
Well, it could be, or it could be just that he has a pride in what he does. I mean, I've seen him...
You're doffing your cap.
No,
you are.
No. Doffing the cap is saying that to the person, right? But I would think you have to respect what the role the person has or the institution, and not to. And what
the
I'm
rich man in his castle, the poor man in his gate. God made them high and lowly and ordered their estate.
Yeah, because it's to do with riches. And what I'm just going to say now about privilege.
Yes.
You see what's happened to Andrew, right? Prince Andrew.
No, Andrew.
Andrew. And he's lost that prince, and he's lost that titles and everything, right? And therefore the entire world knows it's going to be in the papers forever. It's saying that it's going to carry on because it could be criminal proceedings, all sorts of things. There's lots of men have done and are doing things like Andrew, but because they're not privileged, you might be lucky to read a sentence in the local paper about if they've just been tried.
Oh, this is Clara. So, I mean,
no.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
Okay. All right. Well, Peter Mandelson has lost everything as a consequence of being mates with Jeffrey Epstein. He wasn't born into privilege. He wasn't born into advantage.
Yeah.
You're lovely. You know you're lovely, don't you?
Yeah.
You are absolutely lovely, but come the revolution, come the revolution, Clara. I'm going to keep you safe, all right?
All right. But I don't want Nigel Farage to be president.
No, nor do I. But I don't want Andrew Windsor to be king, and that would have happened if anything had happened to his brother prior to the 21st of June 1982. Speaking of history, this isn't for Clara. This is for everybody. The Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. Don't look it up, and if you found this somewhere else, because there are other anoraks in the UK media, when was it last used? When was it last used? The Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. And what was it used for? I'll tell you after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I'll tell you what the royal family is for. The royal family is to chiefly exist to distract you from the fact, or even perhaps to make you not care enough about the fact that 0.3% of the population in this country, that's about 160,000 families, owns 2/3 of the country. In fact, they don't technically own any of it, because it all belongs to the monarch. Less than 1% of the population technically doesn't own 70% of the land, but to all intents and purposes it does. Only Brazil has a more unequal land distribution on this earth. Did you know that? Of all the lands on earth, only Brazil has a more unequal land distribution. And technically, we're all tenants, even if you think you own your house. The monarch, since William the Conqueror, has been the owner of the entire country. The first thing William did was parcel it all up and hand it out to friendly dukes and earls, who still own much of it. It's why the late Duke of Westminster's observation was simultaneously amusing and tragic. I think Charles is William's 23rd great-grandson, if that's correct. And you're a tenant in your own home, the price of your tenancy being your loyalty to the crown. The Anglo-Saxons didn't even inherit crowns. They were elected. Admittedly, my ancestors and your ancestors probably couldn't have got onto the ballot, but you would be elected from viable contenders to be king. But not anymore, not since 1066, or 1068 possibly. And that's it. That's what it's there for. So we sit here in 2025, and I don't even know that this is a deal breaker, because you show me any other country, I'll show you epic inequality. But in terms of the royal family, the main reason for their existence is to sustain this ridiculous, this obscene status quo. And I'll say it again, even though it sounds a bit daft, I'm not even a Republican. The last time that the Titles Deprivation Act was used was in 1917, I believe. I beg your pardon. The Act is from 1917. It was used in 1919 to strip the titles from Leopold Charles, Duke of Albany, Earl of Clarence and Baron Arklow, and Ernest Augustus, Duke of Cumberland and Teviotdale, Earl of Armagh, Ernest Augustus, Duke of Brunswick, Prince of Great Britain and Ireland, and Henry Viscount Taff of Corran and Baron of Ballymote. Do you know why they lost their titles? Why they were subject to the Titles Deprivation Act? Well, they were relatives of the then monarch, George V, and they committed the cardinal sin of fighting for the Germans during the First World War. Of course, if they'd won, the Germans, we'd barely notice, because the cousins that got deposed would have replaced the cousins that did the deposing. The land would have stayed in the hands of exactly the same families, and we'd still be tugging our forelocks and doffing our caps and pretending 100 years later that everything would be so much worse if we had a president rather than a king. So there it is. They also changed their name. That's what I mean about PR. You think PR is a modern invention? Or I think PR is a modern invention. When I was a journalist, a newspaper journalist, PRs they didn't have the power that they have now, but it must have gone cyclically. They just weren't called PRs. So we're going to have a quick meeting. We're having a bit of an emergency meeting. Uncle Kaiser has declared war on us. What are we going to... Oh, he was so nice. He got me such lovely socks last Christmas. I can't believe that Uncle Kaiser has declared war upon England. That's just so difficult. I mean, honestly, I'm going to have to rewrite my... I'm going to have to rewrite the invitations for the New Year's party. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're at war with our German cousin. And we've even got the same surname. And then sort of, we're talking early 20th century equivalent of Peter Mandelson. That's a bad example. Who's the best spin doctor? Alistair Campbell. So Alistair Campbell is working for Lord Alistair of Campbell, who is the spin doctor in chief to George V. Says, well, I think I know what you should do. he says, in a rare example of managing to get an entire sentence out without swearing, he says, let's just change your name. We'll just change your name. And the king goes, what? You just change your name? I can't change my name. I'm a proud Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. I'm not changing my name. Look, if you don't change your name, then people are going to point out that they are sending their fathers, their sons and their brothers to die in a war that you are fighting with your bloody cousin. OK, yeah, you've got a point there, Sir Alistair of Campbell. I think I'm going to change my name. What shall I call myself? Buckingham. Buckingham. George Buckingham's got it. No, we've already got a Duke of Buckingham. You can't be Buckingham. Someone's Bagsied it. Oh, lordy. Balmoral. George Balmoral. No, it doesn't quite work because, it's a bit too Scottish, isn't it? By Jove, I think I've got it. Let's call ourselves Windsor. George Windsor has a lovely ring to it. And therefore, the plebs won't realise that they're sending their fathers, their brothers and their sons to die in a war that I'm fighting against my first cousin, Uncle Kaiser. And that is why they are now called Windsor. They weren't the only ones, of course. Prince Louis of Battenberg, famous, of course, for inventing a cake, he became Lord Louis Mountbatten, the uncle of Prince Philip and mentor to King Charles. So it is just a PR triumph, the whole thing. Question of why we put up with it is probably for another day. Dave's in Bury. Dave, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing?
Pretty good, mate. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I sort of, the question, what are they for? I'm probably going to be your most agreeable caller that you've had, I would say, because I really don't know and I don't understand what they're for, if I'm being completely honest.
This is not how radio phone-ins work. Anyone can ring in and say, I don't know. You're supposed to give me a pungent opinion.
Well, I think that's my answer, is that I don't realise the status quo and why we are with it, if that makes any sense.
Well, do you know? I mean, you understand now because I've explained that 0.3% of the population owns God knows how much of the land. Yep. These families literally trace their lineage back to William the Conqueror, who literally claimed ownership of the entire country when it had previously been a sort of patchwork of nobles' estates, and literally carved it up and handed it out to his most favoured friends and allies. And we're still living under that ludicrous system. That's why they exist. That's what they're for, to keep it clear and open.
I understand how we got here. I just don't understand why we're sticking with that as a way of sort of... And I prefix it with the fact that I don't have anything personally against them. Like you, I wouldn't say I'm particularly a Republican. Maybe I am, I don't know. But I think when things like this with Andrew happens, it sort of wakes you up and removes the veneer of, God, why do we go with this system,
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on it, really. And then the argument that always gets said balanced is that, well, the tourism that's brought in and that generates this, that and the other. And I think, does that really outweigh the cost? I don't know.
On. One word, Dave.
Go on.
Pyramids.
Okay.
Still get a lot of tourists, pal, and there hasn't been a pharaoh for centuries.
Exactly, yeah. And
you can still have a little shufti around Buckingham Palace, go and have a look at the paintings, check out the suit of armour at Windsor Castle. You do not need a monarch to sell tickets.
Yeah, I know, and you were talking earlier about the alternatives, and then surely the alternative is what we've got now, just minus the royal family, isn't it? There doesn't have to be a president, does there? I don't know.
No, I don't think there does. I mean, a prime minister becomes a head of state. I suppose what you're seeing in America is the possibility, and this is held up as a great, terrible prospect, that Trump will actually impose... he will destroy democracy and appoint himself as a de facto king. And what we don't have is we have a king, but oddly not a de facto king. The king doesn't actually have much power per se. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, for him to overthrow a government, for example. But you're right. We elect a prime minister. He governs for 4 years, and then we have another election. And the absence of somebody delivering a speech every parliament would be forgotten within 6 months.
I agree.
It's a funny one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dave, thank you. I should remind everybody that Emily Maitlis, whose interview with Andrew Windsor started this ball rolling, and I doubt I'll ask her. I'll probably be the millionth person to ask her whether or not she had any inkling of where the ball may end up when she called time on that extraordinary encounter, which, let me be the millionth person to tell you, Andrew and his team thought had gone absolutely brilliantly. Not just him, although I imagine that if you were in his team, it would be rather tricky to say, no, I think you really fudged that up, mate. Boss, Your Highness, sorry, bow, curtsy. Neil, I think you really messed that up, Your Highness. If you said that, you'd be out of a job by tea time. I was reading a story yesterday about a staff party for royals, and he called his own chef back to bake him a potato.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 4 minutes after 11, and I was ready to move on. There are a couple of other things in the news today. There's an extraordinary story in The Guardian about how many people still believe in ghosts, and it is actually Halloween. So I think I might have a little look at that come 12 o'clock on Friday, and I might give marks out of 10 for the most. I have a ghost story, would you believe? And yet I don't believe in ghosts. I suspect that's the position of most people, isn't it? I presume that something else happened, probably alcohol, that explains why I had a very supernatural, spirits indeed, had a very supernatural experience when I was about 15 or 16. But it just feels as if, and whether you care about the royal family or not isn't the point today, is it? It just feels as if this is quite an extra... I mean, the last time it happened was in 1919, and that was to people who were fighting for the enemy in World War I, albeit that the enemy was essentially family members of the people that removed the titles. But the sense of the moment, the importance of the moment is pretty huge. So I think we'll carry on talking about it. And I'll leave one question on the board, which is, is this fair, this analysis that we've ended up at? I'll let Liam sum it up best, actually, because this, to me, it's not a subject I gave much thought to before I had this job. There's quite a few subjects I didn't give much thought to before I had this job. The royal family would probably be one of them. I imagine I did sixth form debates about abolishing the royal family, but I didn't really care. It's only when you read into how entrenched... there's something about unearned privilege that really boils my blood. I mean, even as someone who, in a way, benefited from it by dint of my education, it was unearned. This idea, the unfair advantages that you can get in life, you know? And I'm not from a wealthy background, and yet I still have unfair advantages in my life by dint of the fact that my dad rose further in life than he was supposed to as the son of a Leeds publican. There's something about it. I interviewed John Lloyd yesterday, who is... I mean, it's probably easier to remind you of the comedy masterpieces that he wasn't responsible for or a large part of. You name it, John Lloyd's fingerprints are on it for the course of the last 40 or 50 years. So not the 9 o'clock news, quote unquote, on Radio 4, QI most recently, Blackadder. Most impressively, pretty much all sorts of collaborations with Rowan Atkinson. He even directed, do you remember those Barclaycard adverts that were the sort of precursor to Johnny English when Rowan Atkinson was playing a rubbish version of James Bond? I just remember the one where the rug was caught fire as he was carrying. He thought he could smell Tuareg campfires. So anyway, John Lloyd, wonderful, wonderful subject of a forthcoming full disclosure. And he described himself as having been driven partly by dint of an education a little bit like mine in terms of brutality and strangeness, being driven by unfair and unearned authority. People who have the right to tell you what to do, who have not really earned that right, who don't deserve that right. The greatest injustice of all, you feel it burn inside you as a child, don't you? When you are being told what to do by somebody who hasn't really done anything to earn that status or that role, you know? And that might be part of it. The unfairness of it all, the horrific unfairness of it all, the hideous conduct of these people. You remember when Andrew's wife was photographed having her toes sucked by some Texan financial advisor? To which you say, fair enough, everybody's entitled to have their toes sucked as long as all partners are willing and of age. But the idea that I have to curtsy if I meet her, I mean, what? I'd do a phone-in on that if I thought we could. Why do I have to bow? Why do you have to bow? Why do you think it's right that you should curtsy if you meet the king? Can we do that? I quite like that. Well, are you going to ring me, though? Because I'm in a nice mood today, but I'm obviously of a view that you shouldn't have to curtsy if you meet the king. Why do you think you should? Why do you think it is right? And you know who does more curtsying than anyone else? More curtsying and bowing than anyone else? The people I just told you about. The dukes and the earls, the countesses and the ladies. It's a job. A few of you are expressing surprise that being a lady in waiting just involves sitting around drinking tea. Well, drinking tea. Those are drinking gin and Dubonnet in the case of the late Queen Mother. And gossiping. That's pretty much all they do. You've got staff to do everything else. You don't come up from your family seat in Norfolk to sit with the Queen all day, to do her ironing or to make her a sandwich. You're just there to keep her company. Hasn't changed since Tudor times. That is the court. That's what they're for. The only thing that doesn't exist anymore is the jester. I don't know how anyone would justify it. Why do you think it's right that you should bow or curtsy if you meet the king? Why do you think it's right that you should do that? Can we do that? I'd love you to ring me on this. I promise not to bite your head off. I just really want to hear your reasoning on why you think that you should bow or curtsy when you meet the king, but not when you meet, I don't know, Nick Ferrari. Why do you have to bow or curtsy when you meet the king, but not when you meet Nick Ferrari? 0345 6060 973, or me, or Christopher Biggins. Okay? Why do you think you should have to bow and curtsy when you meet the king, but not anybody else? 0345 6060 973. While we're on the subject, if you really are a royalist, I hope I haven't upset you too much today. I've been trying to focus on facts and statistics with a side order of feelings. But if you love the royal family, if you've got all the tea towels, I just wonder how you're feeling today. And that is a question from, we spend a lot of time together. I'm asking this from a place of concern. I may not share your views. I may not have much sympathy with them. But I want to know how you're feeling. How are you dealing with this? As someone who really loves the royal family, as someone who perhaps until relatively recently, until that big payout was made, was giving Andrew Windsor the benefit of the doubt. How big a deal do you think this is? And how is it affecting you? So we've got lots of questions up and running now. We're probably going to be here till Sheila. You've got the question about what the royal family is for, which a lot of you are still answering. You've got the new question, which I really like, and I've never asked before, which is, why do you think it's right that you should curtsy or bow to the king, but not to Keith? 0345 6060 973. And then the final question, and I promise you I'm asking this in good faith. As someone who is really, really royal, love them, got all the tea towels, how are you dealing with the latest news? What do you think of the latest news? Okay, hit the numbers now, you will get through. I'm just going to read this from Liam, because I've had it for a while and I love it. Quite a few of you pointing out that you would definitely curtsy if you met Christopher Biggins, which is perfectly reasonable, I suppose. Morning, James. I've pondered this before, writes Liam. I've maybe even got a little conspiratorial over it as a younger man. But I believe that the royal family are a reminder to the subjects that they are below. That there is a hierarchy that you and I can never reach. It's when you look at it it's a complete theatre. Even the carriages and houses are theatrical. They have sacrificed to live that life, though. They cannot act like we act and are implored not to prove that they are better than us. So when Andrew gets caught out, all he loses is his right to act better than us. He lost his role in the theatre, that's all. When he was fighting in the Falklands, he was allowed to act better than us and pushed in front of every camera in the play. Now he has to sit aside and watch from the rafters. I mean, his punishment is to live in circumstances that most of us would consider luxurious. I presume. I mean, I don't think he's going to be living in a box on the Sandringham estate, but you never know. So why? Why would you bow? And how, as a devout royalist, are you dealing with this latest development? Colin is in Alton. Colin, what would you like to say?
I think that it is a matter of manners. Good manners.
So do you bow to everybody?
It's the same reason that I would stand up if a lady comes into the room. It's the same way I would open the door for an older person and let them go first. It's the same way I would stand up in a bus to let a woman or some old lady sit down.
It's not.
It is a matter of manners and courtesy.
So who else do you bow to?
It is, well, if I was in the army, I would be doing exactly what the Sergeant Major told me, as I did when I was.
Yes, but who else do you bow to? Because you get up for all women and you offer your seat to all old people and you make way for aged people in all circumstances. Who else, if it's the same, who else do you bow to?
It is a matter of tradition.
No, you can keep saying that, but I'm picking up on what you've already said, Colin, respectfully and with good manners. Who else do you bow to?
I would not think there were that many people I would bow to, but I would think more or less.
Well, then it's nothing like standing up for all women, is it, or offering your seat to all old people? It couldn't be more different. One is treating everybody with a certain characteristic as being the same, and one is reserving behaviour for a single individual. So why do you do it? It's not manners.
I still think it's a matter of respect.
Well, why do you respect him? Why do you respect him more than you respect the Pope?
When you ask who else I would bow to, when I go into church,
yes,
I stand at the end of the nave and I bow to the altar.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is helping.
What?
Well, I'm not sure this is helping. So you're bowing to God and King Charles?
No, I am paying respect.
Right, to a table.
Well, to a table representing all the things that the religion does.
And what are you bowing to when you bow to a king?
The respect for the monarchy, the thing that people have given their lives for centuries and have fought for centuries.
No,
and they are the representative of freedom, and everybody wants to have somebody at the head of the club. You
can believe all of that without bowing. You don't bow to the chairman of a company. You don't curtsy. You don't curtsy to his wife. And if something had happened to Charles prior to the birth of Prince William, you'd be bowing to a man who counts a paedophile among his closest ever friends. Explain that to me.
Look, there are going to be deviants in every single walk of life.
So let's never bow to anybody. So let's never bow to anybody then. Surely that's the safest way to make sure you don't end up.
All traditions.
You don't end. No. I think introducing a system that protects you, Colin, from bowing to a paedophile's friend does not involve the destruction of all tradition, does it?
No, but I think that's the drive you want to make.
I'm trying to save you from the humiliation of bowing to a paedophile's friend. And the best way to do it is to accept that we shouldn't bow to anybody. Except if you must, God.
Well, or a representative of God. I mean,
no, you don't bow to priests.
I pay them great respect.
Well, I'm glad you do, but you don't bow to them. And to protect you from the shame and embarrassment of having to bow to the friend of a paedophile, let's just get rid of bowing to the royals. Everybody wins. What do we lose?
Well, it's just total destruction. You can't make judgments.
What do we lose?
It's all about what you're talking about.
What do we lose?
Judgment. Oh, are you a family member who's got a paedophile in the family?
What do we lose?
I will not pay you respect.
What do we lose?
Somebody else you will.
What do we lose?
You're making judgments all the time. And I do think... James,
what's King Charles done to his brother?
I think he's shown his brother a course of action because he has not respected the position that he was given.
So he's made a judgment?
Certainly.
Oh, so we're in favour of that now? Oh, no. or only kings can do that then?
No, you are such an awkward man. I do love your programme.
You're very kind. I love you. I'm not awkward. I'm just right.
Oh, you're not right.
Do you know what I'm going to do? Do you know what I'm going to do, Colin?
You want to take everything down.
No, I don't. I think I really don't. I just want people to be respected for what they have done, not what they have inherited, whether it's honour, pageantry or achievement.
Let me finish by just saying the person I get the biggest respect for is the chap who does my garden. Because he gets up all weather, all whatever. He's never been late. He's worked for me for 20 years. I don't think he's been late once. And I care more what he would think than even what the king would think.
Do you bow to him?
I make him a cup of coffee.
Colin, I'm going to give you a little nod, okay, just before we go. It's not a full bow, but I'm going to give you a respectful nod of the head, okay?
Very kind.
Have a wonderful weekend. It's 11:18.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 20 minutes after 11, and we are wondering what the royal family is for, if not simply to sustain and sanitise, privilege wash, you might call it, a ludicrously unfair status quo. And, questioning that status quo can cause some upset, even some offence. This idea that things have to be exactly as they are because it keeps the chaos at bay is something that I have sympathy for. I understand where that feeling comes from. But I also think it's wrong and nonsensical and turns us into agents of reactionary views. It means that nothing ever changes, nothing ever gets better. Why do you think they've turned progressive into a dirty word? Why do you think the firewalls of tradition, whether it's media or other institutions, have turned progressive into a dirty word? Do-gooder, dirty word. Because why on earth would you want to do good when you could just sustain the status quo? And progressive, oh Lord, no, we don't like progress. Down with that sort of thing. Doff cap, tug forelock, bow, curtsy, salute. 21 minutes after 11. So why would you bow to the king and not to Keith? Let me think of someone else. Cliff Richard. Who's the most wonderful sort of national treasure? Who has inherited the mantle of the Queen Mother as the person that... Elton John, thank you. I mentioned this yesterday. Somehow, Elton John has exempted himself from the media kicking that everybody involved in pursuing the disgusting phone hackers who still populate the highest echelons of UK and US media receive. Steve Coogan in the studio yesterday, a wonderful, a paragon example of what happens if you dare to stand up to the UK media. Prince Harry, of course, the appropriately enough, as a person who's still a prince. David Attenborough, more than Elton John. Don't ask me why. David Attenborough. Why do you bow to the king and not to David Attenborough? He looks a bit royal. That's good enough, isn't it? Surely. 22 minutes after 11. Phil's in Paris. Phil, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
It's really... I hate this because it's a point of technically, because I actually agree with everything you're saying.
Good.
But it's not the person, it's not Charles that you're bowing to.
Yeah.
It's the crown.
Yes.
And we live in a nation where everything is of the crown, so it's the crown's, HMRC, as opposed to Charles's. It's the crown versus in court and so on. If it was, I don't know, say everything by some weird thing that went on, it turned out that tomorrow it was James O'Brien was next in line to the throne.
Yeah. People
would be going to you as the representative of the crown. And so what my sort of, it's coming at it from a slightly different angle, but it's the same. I only caught the tail end of the last caller, but in the military, you're saluting the commission, not the individual.
Yeah, but he salutes you back.
Yeah, and that's the custom. The same way that when you shake hands, it goes back to a...
Yeah, but that's why I don't see it on quite the same page. I mean, I know there's a very strict etiquette on who salutes first and all that kind of thing, but the king doesn't bow back.
No, I take that.
Partly because the crown would fall off.
Yeah, I think that's a large part of it. But I think, if we move to a...
but I can hit you with the why now, the chain of whys, sure. Like the 6-year-old boy. Why, Dad? Why? Because why should I bow to the crown? Even because it could have ended up on Andrew's head.
Oh, entirely. I suppose it's not the head that it lands upon; it's the crown itself. So, in theory, if there's a president, for example, in America, the military salutes the president. They're not a crown. He's not. Trump's not a king.
No, but the president. He has been elected, so he's there by right. Or even, if you wanted to get medieval about it, he's killed the last fella, so he is there by right. There is something really weird historically.
Using that though, isn't the king there by right
Yes.
I'm not saying I believe in meritocracy. I'm not making an argument for the royalty.
Why don't we bow to anyone else? Does the conductor bow to the orchestra? Or he bows to the crowd. You bow to the crowd, don't you? After that doesn't work. That doesn't work because that's a humble thing to do. It's a saying
but that's what bowing to a king's supposed to be as well. It's supposed to be a humble, you're better than me. I'm not saying they are, but that's what the whole thing behind it is. Yes, doff my cap, yes, sir, type thing.
I think the thing is
to the crown. So, I mean, all right, yes, people bow to princes and everything as well, but it's one of those things where actually you're going to the crown. I'm doffing my cap.
No, I get it, and I mean, you're obviously up to a point. You're technically correct. Why? To some people, I mean, Colin was a lovely chap, and I'm glad that we parted giggling. But that you could sense, and that there is something quite, I want a better word than offensive. There's something deeply challenging about the idea that you shouldn't be doing that. It is as if the trappings of tradition hold society together, and if you tug at one thread, I think this is why, and I'm not suggesting for a moment that Colin would be in this category, but an awful lot of people, when a woman of colour came into the royal family, it tugged at threads of what they thought the natural order should be and what they thought the natural hierarchy should be, and both within and without the palace. The one thing they could never forgive Harry for was falling in love with either a commoner, as it would have been in the olden days, but happily we've moved beyond that, but they weren't quite ready to embrace a woman of colour in the way that they were to embrace a white commoner like Kate Middleton. And if you tug at these threads of tradition, there's a fear that the whole thing falls apart. And the more we've talked about it today, the more I've realised that that's not a coincidence. That's why you do the pageant. The more tradition that you can inflict upon the population, the more persuaded many of them will be that if you get rid of any of the tradition, everything falls apart and chaos weighs in. And the bowing is just part of that. If you didn't bow, the world would end. If you didn't bow, the sky would fall. If we didn't bow to the king, then God knows you'd be destroying everything.
I think it touches on what it means to a lot of people for British culture. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying that there's a lot of, this is my place, this is my lane, and I stay in that, and we can't rock the boat as such. We can within sort of a limited spectrum. Anyone who doesn't, everyone who does sort of do that, they're sort of outcast and everything else. It's past. I think there's a fear that you change too much and it changes what we are as a people.
Yes, I think you're right. And I don't get that, and yet I do. I mean, do you see what I mean? I don't feel it, but you and I can explain it to each other, and we can both stroke our beards and nod along. Do you have a beard, Phil?
I actually do. But,
marvellous. Are you stroking it at the moment?
I know you said it's one of those things of being ex-military where you're not allowed to have one for years and years, and then the second you leave, you grow one.
Yeah.
I think it's without quoting to Thatcher too much. I think America's built on philosophy, attitude in a lot of common sort of American commentary that tradition's there to be broken, whereas in the UK we wouldn't dare.
Yeah,
change
maybe.
At a societal level, Yeah,
maybe. I don't know. I mean, some of the tradition in the United States seems to be as baked in as some of the tradition here, but there is a fundamentally different philosophy when it comes to. I mean, they treat the flag in a really reverential way, don't they? Instead of the crown, but I suppose the process is probably a little bit more similar than we allow, and it takes us back to where you began, in that you're I mean, Trump, of course, reminds us that anybody, the right stroke wrong person comes along and they can ride roughshod over all of the carefully cultivated traditions designed to provide the kind of protection of, well, I would say the status quo as if it were a bad thing, because I'm looking at inequality and distribution. But of course, the status quo is generally preferable to chaos. The problem is that when you start prioritising the status quo above everything, you can end up with what I think Donald Trump is currently planning to do, which is to invent and impose chaos on a country and then give yourself powers to avert it or to fight it, and therefore ride roughshod over democracy. I was reading about half of South Africans now saying that they'd rather be governed by the military than by the consequences of democracy. And I guess the more chaotic your country is, the more tempting it is to think that, well, maybe we shouldn't be asking everybody their opinion. We just need somebody who is going to, grab the reins and lead the horse to water. And if Trump can introduce enough chaos to America, then I'm increasingly persuaded that is his plan, or at least the plan of the people around him. So Simon Conway is here with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I think I may have misspoken, because, of course, that caller told us about his friend who was taken aside at an event and told off for not having curtsied to Andrew. So it's not just you'd have to curtsy to all of them, wouldn't you? You'd have to bow and curtsy to all of them. What's the point at which you don't? You know, people, when I started on newspapers, there were people who did this sort of thing for a living. Someone you'd ring up and say, what rank do you have to be before you don't have to curtsy or bow anymore to someone? I presume, if I met Prince William, would I be expected to bow? Jog on. I might curtsy. But it's not just the king. It is, you know I'm right. The more you think about it, the more bonkers it is. And you can talk all you want about tradition, but why do you respect even a crown? Joseph's in Stroud. Joseph, what would you like to say?
Hi, great conversation. This kind of really gets to the nub of who we are as a nation in a roundabout way.
I hope so.
Well, it kind of does, actually, because it's like... Because I've thought on this for a while. I come from Canada. Canada is a member of the Commonwealth. We have the crown as opposed to being a republic.
Yeah.
And, my father is in the legal profession. And, I've thought about this a lot. There's conversations we've had for a long time. It's like, what is this bizarre edifice we have of the crown? Because it's absurd. It's absurd. It used to be in Canada, when a cop pulled you over, he gave you a ticket on behalf of a little old lady who lived in a house on the other side of the ocean.
Several houses, Joseph.
Yeah, well, several houses, but she only lived in one at a time, right?
Yeah,
and,
That's physics.
And when a judge, banged his gavel and sent you down for life, she or he was doing it on behalf of a little old lady who lived in a house on the other side of the ocean.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's even more bonkers when it's on the other side of the ocean than it is when you're in the same country, isn't it?
Exactly. And my dad said that was the point.
Go on.
The whole point of it was that it humbled the machinery of power.
Yeah.
It took the sting out of it. The cop, when he pulls you over, he's not doing it because he was elected by the local people and therefore his will is a manifestation of the will of the people.
Yeah. He's
doing it because some person who was, got his power.
The 23rd great-grandchild of William the Conqueror has
Bingo. Or not even a great-great-grandchild, was obliquely related to somebody who was obliquely related to somebody that could somehow or other trace their lineage back to somebody who was not even related to... So what was your dad...
I mean, what was your dad's point then? Was he... I mean, he was explaining it, but he wasn't justifying it.
Well, no. So it's not so much a justification. It's this is why we pragmatically keep this bizarre thing.
Because people are more likely to bend the knee to this than they are to the democratically elected sheriff.
It's not even the democratically elected sheriff.
What is it?
It's that it keeps the reason that we've kept this bizarre thing from a pragmatic perspective for the last 1,000 years or more is because it keeps the levers, or it keeps the machinery of power and force, which kind of rules our lives in a real sense.
So, and the more you imbue
from
it,
getting overweening.
The more you. Well, that's the bit I don't get. From the power doesn't get overweening. Oh, you mean the agents of power don't get overweening because they are deferential to the crown or the monarch?
At the end of the day, when the judge sends you to jail for 25 years for doing something horrendous, they're not doing, or for 5 years, or for 2 years, or for 1 year, or for 3 months. They're not doing it because they are a manifestation of the will of power or the will of the people. They're doing it on behalf of they're doing it in lieu of a dude with big ears who lives in a big house.
Yeah. And the more you can imbue it with this sense of unquestioning fealty or unquestioning loyalty, the more people end up thinking, I don't really want to think about this, but my God, if anybody suggests I shouldn't be doing that, then they should be taken to the tower immediately and strung up from the nearest lamppost. Then the more...
But it's also, we all know it's absurd.
Well, we don't all know it's absurd. No, only people who think about it know it's absurd. And part of the package is you're not supposed to think about it.
Know it's absurd. Honestly,
it's like Brexit.
At our core, core, if we pick at it, we know it's absurd. Like even the guy who was on before, who made the cup of coffee for his gardener.
Lovely man.
He knows it's absurd.
He doesn't.
He knows it's a little bit weird.
He doesn't. And he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to contemplate the possibility that it's a little bit weird.
You're right. We live in Brexit Britain.
Well,
right.
I mean, I don't like bringing Brexit into absolutely everything. Spoiler alert, yes, I do. But that idea that it is something that you can support if you don't think about it does actually work here, doesn't it? If I focus entirely upon unexamined emotions, then I've got no problem whatsoever supporting this thing. But if I start thinking about it, and God forbid anybody forces me to, then it is all going to fall apart in a hurry. Is there any prospect of Canada anytime soon deciding to cut the umbilical?
It's too practical. It's too useful. It's too like, it does do that thing of it keeps can you imagine Keir Starmer ordering ICE agents to go marching around to checking people's ID and looking for foreign nationals to kick out of the country? Or even, heaven forfend, Nigel Farage getting elected and trying to do that. He wouldn't. He couldn't, because constitutionally it would be impossible, because those people wouldn't be working for Nigel Farage. They'd be working for King Charles.
Well, yeah, except then we hop over the border from Canada into the United States of America, and you can see that a truly diabolical individual can actually, But
constitutionally, he can, because they work for him.
No, they work for the office.
He is the crown there.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, but I still think that a suitably diabolical individual, as history, we've seen throughout history, can ride roughshod over any checks and balances that have been put in place. But you're right to remind us that some checks and balances will be more robust than others. And some of them, of course, are informal. Joseph, thank you. Some of them are informal. I'm fascinated by that little vignette that came out of nowhere about an hour ago when we were talking about the spin doctors in 1919 who just suggested that they changed their name in order to avoid a PR humiliation of it being pointed out that your first cousins are the people that we're sending our sons and brothers to die fighting against. That there is the invisible stuff, the stuff that is done to sustain the status quo. Let's just change our name. So you hear in the news that he's going to be called Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, but Mountbatten is a name that was made up 100 years ago to disguise the fact that one of the key royals had a very German name. He was called Battenberg, so they changed it to Mountbatten. It's absurd, utterly absurd. You could argue, as the producer has just suggested, showing off her erudition and scholarship, that Thomas Cromwell was the original royal spin doctor. Thomas Cromwell was working for a syphilitic, adulterous narcissist called Henry VIII. And yet Thomas Cromwell not only sort of presided over the portrayal of Henry as a cross between the Messiah and Elvis Presley, but he also dissolved the monasteries just to get him loads of money. Only it's an extraordinary exercise. Taking on God, coming into a country where everybody thought they were God-fearing and deciding to just take all the money off the monasteries because this narcissistic, syphilitic man-child that you're working for needed more money to, finance his wars. Absolutely incredible work. So the greatest royal spin doctor of all time, probably Thomas Cromwell. Did he get executed in the end for his trouble? Probably they all did, didn't they, in the end? Covering a lot of ground today. 11:41 is the time. Emily Maitlis joining us in about 5 minutes' time, of course. It was her interview with Andrew, now Windsor, that set all of these balls in motion. Is it a Faraday? What's it called when I've got one at home. I know it's a catalyst, but I've got one at home where you lift up the little metal ball and then let it go. Your dad had one on his desk when you were a kid and you thought it was the most magic. Newton's cradle, yeah, not Faraday. Newton's cradle, thank you, Keith. It's a bit like that, isn't it? Although I can't imagine she had any inkling of just how far this ball would roll when the interview was conducted or indeed concluded. A few of you pointing out, Michael most recently, you don't see Battenberg cake anymore, do you? Is it the one that had lots of different colours? Battenberg cake. Mark's in Milan. Mark, what would you like to say?
Oh, well, first I have to confess that I'm a bearded wokey left-wing Republican.
Hurrah!
Who has read?
And you're in Europe,
and I'm still woke.
And you're in Europe. God forbid! This is outrageous.
And I read Piers Morgan's book as well. And I'm still a wokey bearded lefty Republican.
Someone has to.
Yeah, I met him, Andrew.
Okay.
At a private function, and no, I didn't bow.
And what happened?
Well, it was actually at the Royal Academy of Arts. It was to do for a charity do, and he was the guest of honour. There weren't many people, at about 15 or 16 or so.
Okay.
And he gave a little bit of a speech.
Yes.
Which, to be honest, I didn't pay much attention to because I was too busy stealing the finger buffet. So.
But you weren't cautioned for not bowing, because Harry Mount has written a piece. I don't know what paper is this in. Do we know? There's a journalist called Harry Mount who I think he is also actually a scion of a very privileged family, so he's qualified to write this. And he talks about a friend who 30 years ago, staying in a house in Yorkshire when Prince Andrew was invited to dinner, she curtsied to him when he walked into the room, and he said, "No, not right. I'm going to go out of the room, come back in, and you're going to curtsy properly."
Oh, let's hope they didn't have breakfast together and he used the wrong egg spoon.
Well, it is like that, isn't it? It's not traditional respect. It's
what
baked-in deference.
Me, James, is that the whole hierarchy within the UK, and I'm in Italy right now, a Grand Republic, is that to be in the armed forces, and I was in the armed forces, you have to swear allegiance to the Queen.
Yes, King.
To be in government, you have to swear allegiance to the Queen.
King.
King, sorry, now I keep forgetting these days. Yeah. But like, why, if you're a Republican, can you not be a patriot? They're not mutually exclusive. I'm patriotic. I had to swear allegiance to the Queen when I joined the military.
There's no opt-out on that. It's not like being in court when you can ask not to swear on the Bible, for example.
No, there's no opt-out, and you can't cross your fingers because you're stood to attention, so you can't do that either. You got your thumb down.
Well, this is all part of the PR, isn't it? That's how you sustain it, by actually making them inextricable. So I can't be patriotic without swearing allegiance to the King. I literally can't go and fight for my...
I find it bizarre.
Well, it is bizarre, but it's not bizarre when you look at it through the lens that we've been looking at all this morning, which makes perfect sense. They've got one job, and that's to survive.
Oh, by the way, I can recommend Piers Morgan's book. You will definitely remain woke.
Well, I may pass on that offer, but I'm very grateful for the advice. It's coming up to 11:45. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 11:48. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. There's a sort of observed dictum in journalism that the journalist should never become the story. And like all rules, there will be exceptions that prove it. My colleague Emily Maitlis, of course, set the ball rolling that yesterday ended with Andrew Windsor being stripped of all his titles. And although enormous attention has been focused on that interview that she conducted when she was presenting Newsnight, there is absolutely no a question of her having become the story. And the reason why I know that is that she's still working. She joins me now, and she will not be resting on any laurels or doing laps of honour. She'll probably begin by telling me stuff that the rest of us don't currently know. Emily, over to you.
I'm going to begin by telling you that the person who got the story rolling, the ball rolling, was Virginia Giuffre. And all we did was amplify her words, or take her words to the place where they had a significance and they were hard to ignore. And she was fighting that fight for, over a decade, 11 years. And we have only been in this situation since the interview of 2019. But I guess what I will say, James, is that, I think we had an inkling that this was on the way as early as last Thursday. And on the newsagents, we reported earlier this week that there had been a kind of camera gathering, a news gathering outside Royal Lodge at the request of the palace to get what they called a passing traffic shot. It was a rather ambiguous phrase. It was very confusing, but they essentially sent out a sort of prompt to camera crews to get sort of down to Royal Lodge in case there was a shot that they might like to use. Wow. And we understood from that meant the King on the way back from the Vatican, possibly going in to read his brother, Prince Andrew, as was the Riot Act. What happened was that the palace got a little bit nervous. They saw the size of the media turnout. They saw the helicopters, they saw the choppers, and they thought, oh, hang on a sec. I think this is turning into a bit of a media circus. So they backed off. They felt it had got too much. And I don't think last Thursday would have been anywhere near the scale that we saw last night. What happened between then and yesterday? Well, from what I've been told from those very close to the King and Queen, the King had more of a chance to think about what he wanted to do. You'll remember he also faced that very public heckle at Lichfield Cathedral on Monday. And there was some questions about, whether he had a proper grip on the Andrew question. He did. He knew what he wanted to do, but he managed it carefully. And what I was told was that talks began on Tuesday. People close to the King were asked their thoughts on Tuesday night. The talks continued into Wednesday morning. As we've heard, there was sort of constitutional, even sort of legal questions about what could be done. And they were then signed off on Wednesday morning. We got to know about it on Thursday evening. And something, to be fair, James, I hadn't properly understood, which has become a lot clearer to me in the last 24 hours, was I had always assumed, I think many of us had assumed, that it was Prince William that was driving this. I was told last night that actually Prince William, whilst critical to the eventual outcome, was the one who was most concerned about his uncle's mental health, something that he takes very seriously indeed. Clearly, he and his wife have done a lot of work on those issues. And I was also told that there was a little bit of, I don't know if discomfort is too strong, but nervousness originally from the siblings, from Prince Edward and from Princess Anne, who didn't want to see their eldest brother go too hard on their second brother. And so I think this was all part of the discussion that meant things had to slow down a bit between last Thursday and what we saw last night. It was the King himself who had nerves of steel. And contrary to what we've been reading in the papers, what I was told very explicitly was that there was extremely strong pushback from Andrew on all this originally. He was trying to find every means and every reason to resist this. And I think he arrived at the sort of logical conclusion of what had to happen in those talks on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Are we sure? I mean, could he not be dragged kicking and screaming to Sandringham? He doesn't necessarily seem the sort of chap that's likely to reflect upon things and realise he was wrong.
Well, I asked explicitly what brought Andrew. I don't know. Do we call him Andrew now? Prince Andrew Mountbatten. I asked.
Yes, definitely. I've spoken ex cathedra there, Emily. That is what everybody will be doing from henceforth.
Okay.
So happy to clear that up.
You dictate.
Yes, exactly
our new sovereign, James O'Brien. No, I was asked explicitly what brought Andrew around, and I was told that the sovereign had simply made him see the ultimate threat. In other words, so loosely put, you will topple us all.
Yeah.
And that Andrew didn't want this on his shoulders. And it was even sort of suggested that, and I won't get the phrasing or the words right in this, but that the thought was, would your mother really want to see you put at risk the whole establishment? Now, that may sound hyperbolic, but I think there was a nervousness, possibly from the King himself, or at least those around the palace, that public opinion had outpaced the speed at which they were going, and they did not want to leave a gap. They did not want to leave a vacuum into which thoughts of sort of republicanism, if you like, could start creeping and could start shaping. And so that was really what became the sort of driving argument. Do you really want to see this whole thing collapse? Are you really prepared to put us in a position where that is even a question being asked? And that was what brought Andrew round.
What do you think? Because some of the stuff that looks like the straw that broke the camel's back has been around for rather longer than a lot of people realise. It kind of had a second wind almost. What do you think nudged this long-running saga into the realms of existential for the royal family?
I think there were three things. I think the email that emerged from February of 2011, which was 2 months after, he had told me he'd broken off relations with Epstein in December of 2010. That email was very explicit, which said, we're in this together. I mean, talk about tying yourself down. We're in this together. Let's play some more soon. I think when those words became clearly linked, directly linked to Prince Andrew, that became very hard to ignore. We saw the Virginia Giuffre memoir, her own words told through her co-author, Amy Wallace, which clarified not just that she had accused Prince Andrew of sex one time, but 3 times. And on the third occasion, or maybe the second occasion, there were other women present and there was Epstein himself present. I think that meant, if you like, it was no longer containable to one person, to one victim's voice. I think that was nervous. And then there was also the reporting by the Times and the Sunday Times, which showed this peppercorn rent on Royal Lodge, which I think started to reach a whole different area of anger, public anger, which is, what are we doing? Where is our money going? Why are these subsidies going on him? And at the beginning, there was even that suggestion, well, if he leaves Royal Lodge, then would there be sort of 2 houses? Would there be one for Sarah? And again, I was told last night that somebody had to make this very explicit, that there was no public appetite to see Sarah Ferguson sponsored by the public, on public money. And so I think that was then the point at which they said, OK, it doesn't work in Windsor. We knew that the King wanted a bit of space between, the Windsor Castle and his brother. And Sandringham, I think, became a sort of acceptable alternative. It is pretty far away from, the centre of London life there. And we've been told that he's been given a cottage. I should say that it was explained to me, you have to sort of ask about cottages when they're on royal estates. It was explained to me this is more of a villa. We're talking about a 6-bedroom cottage of that ilk. There isn't one that we have in mind, but it wouldn't be what you or I think of as a cottage per se. But I guess the question that we're then left with is, what happens to royal protection? If he's no longer Prince Andrew, does he see royal protection? We know his daughters, the princesses, actually have a very sort of normal working life. They don't receive sort of heavy-duty protection. There will be somebody on Sandringham Estate that offers what I was told was sort of light-duty protection, but there won't be somebody, presumably, in the role of sort of permanent bodyguard. I don't know, or at least that won't be paid for anymore by the public purse. And I guess, James, if you'll come with me on this one, what this means more significantly than Sandringham, cottages, titles, is that he is now, as a citizen, more approachable by the police. If there is an investigation, if Congress wants to call him, if the Met Police want to reopen investigations, he does not have that level of, I don't want to call it immunity, because obviously our royals aren't above the law, but he does not have that level of sort of a protective covering.
Insulation. Insulation
is exactly the word, yeah. So I think, that there could very well be a knock onto this. And I'm not at all saying, I'm not saying that there is an investigation going, whatever, but it leaves him, I think, what's the word? More exposed.
Well, you've preempted my
other investigations. Yeah,
preempted my final question slightly, which was as much of a reminder as an inquiry, albeit that he has been effectively banished. No one can turn off the tap of further revelations or indeed further action, can they? So the palace has moved to distance itself not just from him, but also from future development.
Yeah, and I think that is critical. I mean, if you look at the statement, and it's very, very carefully, cautiously worded, the last line is about the victims of sex trafficking, the victims of sex abuse. It doesn't directly link Andrew. It doesn't even directly link Epstein. And I asked, I was very curious. I said, what does this move mean? Does it mean that they are now presuming guilt? And I was told, no, they think he's an entitled, overly privileged man, out of step with the modern world. Is he an absolute criminal? No. They will never know what involvement he had. So this is it's a very kind of complicated place to be, isn't it? Because you are not accusing him of anything directly. He has, as we know, always denied his involvement with Virginia Giuffre. But you are saying, We, as a palace, as an institution, the monarchy, has to be brutal. We cannot be seen to be adjacent to somebody around whom these questions keep flowing. And I guess that is what's happened now. It has been a significant step removal from the king to his brother.
It's been cauterised, hasn't it? Emily, thank you. Emily Maitlis, presenter, of course, of the Newsagents podcast, and it was that 2019 interview with Prince Andrew that set all of this essentially in motion. Although, as we both kind of alluded to towards the end of that exchange there, it doesn't mean the story, for want of a better word, is over. Perhaps. Far from it. I've heard one whisper from an author who'd been... Oh, yeah, of course we can, if Emily has more to say.
Well, one thing I'd say, James, actually, is I do think it puts the king in a very good light. And I do think he has shown extraordinary leadership on this. And he has gone further than any other world leader, any other head of state. And what we forget is, in this country, we fixate upon the Andrew relationship with Epstein. But there are many, many other powerful men who have never been brought to heel, who we know that victims have talked about, have gone to the FBI, have gone to police about. And in an extraordinary way, actually, this puts more pressure on other people. It puts more pressure on Trump. It puts more pressure on, the governments in France and Israel and any of the countries that have been mentioned in relation to Epstein to sort of say, well, hang on a second, what are you doing about this? This is not the end of the Epstein story. I do not think this ends with Prince Andrew. I think it goes much, much further. And I think the king has set, honestly, a kind of global example.
I hadn't thought of that. That's why they pay you the big bucks, Emily. Thank you. Absolutely fascinating. And I'm glad that you reminded us that it is, of course, a story that begins with Virginia Giuffre and not with journalistic backslapping or gossiping. I probably needed that reminder myself, to be honest. It's 12:02.
James O'Brien on LBC.
2 minutes after 12 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. We should do a missing word round, shouldn't we? I've got a missed information for you as well. I've got a couple of missed informations for you as well. One of them is extraordinary. We haven't talked about Rachel Reeves today, despite the fact that the Daily Mail is still desperately trying to pretend that the balloon of nonsense that they inflated yesterday hasn't been summarily popped. But there was one... I find one piece here. Here it is. This is extraordinary. I'm not even going to count... Oh, actually, why don't I count the pages? So the front page of the Daily Mail today is about Rachel Reeves. They didn't even elevate the Prince Andrew story to what is called the splash. It's called the splash. I don't know why I'm talking in such a patronising fashion. Why is it one rule for the Chancellor and another rule for us? Kemi, if she broke the law, she should go. She was finally asked yesterday, I think by Sam Coates on Sky, about that time she broke the law and then boasted about it when she hacked into Harriet Harman's internet account, but apparently that was completely different. Brazen hypocrisy after she backed licensing in Leeds. The email trail that blows Reeves' defence to pieces. Starmer will do everything he can to save this terrible Chancellor. To lose her would almost certainly mark the end for him too. Furious landlords hit out at her double standard. I mean, page after page after page after page. You thought the Chinese spy story was overcooked. Meet Rachel Reeves. But this qualifies as... God, it's turning into the Emily Maitlis show, this, because this qualifies as a missed information. I think it does, at least, because it's one of those things where you read the article and it almost contradicts the headline.
Missed information.
Thank you, Emily. I had to hand £10,000 back after my licence blunder, so will Ms Reeves be paying up? Asks a writer in the Daily Mail. And what does that headline make you think? Oh, two-tier. Well, no, because you're not an idiot. So it makes you think that perhaps there's some hypocrisy going on here and that Rachel Reeves is going to be spared the full force of the law, that this person writing for the Daily Mail was not spared. I had to hand £10,000 back. Oh, gosh, was it the council that came after you, or was it the taxman? Was it the government? Let me read the article. Oh, no, it was your own former tenants who used this essentially loophole in order to get some of their rent refunded. A situation which, as far as I can understand, Rachel Reeves is now entirely exposed to. Her tenants have the right to claim back all of the rent paid during the period where the licence was not in place. If you are bored to tears by this story, and quite frankly, who could blame you, and haven't kept up to date with the latest developments, there are emails showing that the letting agent promised to take care of it in an exchange with Rachel Reeves' husband. Somewhat unfortunately for everybody involved, he then left the company 1 or 2 days later, and therefore the licence was never secured. So yes, of course, you can argue that they should have double-checked, but why do you buy a dog if you're going to bark yourself? So the Daily Mail desperately trying to find some way of suggesting that there are double standards in play here, found somebody who had been taken to court by her own tenants in pursuit of a rent refund, which could still happen to Rachel Reeves, but somehow managed to write that under the headline, "I had to hand £10,000 back after my licence blunder, so will Ms Reeves end up paying?" Quite possibly she will end up paying up. So why is that? The answer is quite possibly. So why does that get half a page in the Daily Mail today? Answer, because the newspaper is edited by let's say a very excitable man whose grasp on the truth or on reality or on what really matters is probably best illustrated by the fact that they're paying hundreds of thousands of pounds a year to a man who lost 2 independent ethics advisors when he was Prime Minister because they both resigned in disgust at his contempt for ethics and standards. So we'll give him hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. Rachel Reeves made a mistake. We'll go after her like she's a combination of Pol Pot and Joseph Stalin. What could it possibly be that allows somebody who exercises this sort of power over a newspaper to reward a man whose relationship with ethics and integrity was so contemptuous that he lost 2 independent advisors and ended his premiership not even having one because he didn't want to score that inglorious hat-trick, versus someone who immediately referred themselves to that independent advisor and was immediately adjudged to have done nothing wrong. Maybe there is 2-tier justice or 2-tier coverage in this country. And now you put me in a slightly uncomfortable situation because quite a few are asking whether I'm going to say a certain word that refers to a meat-based fast food product, which originated in a German city and is now named after it. Because we spoke to somebody yesterday who had experienced exactly the same. It was the first call of the hour, actually. Had been through exactly what Rachel Reeves appeared to be going through and had been essentially let down by their letting agent and therefore considered this story to be a nothing burger. I use that word advisedly. And I said, tell Eleanor, the producer, what letting agency it is. And if it's the same letting agency, then on tomorrow's show, I will, by way of a secret message... Was the lady called Sue? I don't know. I can't quite remember. But I'll send a secret message to you and you alone, because nobody else will know what's going on. I will say that word, that popular fast food product that is originated in a well-known German city, and you will know that it was actually the same letting agent that Rachel Reeves used. It wasn't the same letting agent. But if I said I'm not going to say that word, you'd think I was saying that word, and that I was sending a double secret message. So it was not. So stop sending me messages. No, Dave, it wasn't Frankfurter. Stop sending me messages about whether or not I'm going to... It was not the same letting agent, and it wouldn't even matter if it was, because Sue didn't tell us which one hers was, and the letting agent responsible for the Rachel Reeves situation has actually been published. So I'm being super careful, because that's how I roll. 12 minutes after 12 is the time. I don't normally roll in this direction. Headline in The Guardian, of all places, today reads, high spirits, belief in ghosts shows no sign of dying out. It is Friday, October the 31st. So you know what that means. Do you know how much I've moved as a radio presenter since we started hanging out together every day? Shall I tell you? I think 20 years ago, I would have done a phone-in now about why are we all getting so excited about Halloween? It's a nonsensical American import. And I kind of would have meant it. I think sometimes back in the day, you come to work and you just look around for something that you're... It's a bit like being a Daily Mail columnist. You're just looking around for something that you're not really irritated by, but you can pretend that you are, because that way you'll get 1,000 words out of it and you can go home early. So did I ever do that? Does anyone remember? It's a good job there's no archives. You'd be able to own me every day with examples of my double standards and hypocrisy. But I've got a horrible feeling I used to do the thing. We should be celebrating Bonfire Night. That's a proud British tradition. trying to blow up Parliament. We should not be celebrating Halloween. It's heretical. It's pagan. But it's lovely. I love it. I love where you see the little groups of children. One of the things I miss most as my girls grow up is accompanying them on trick or treat, because they had so much fun. So much fun. One year, one of my daughters and her good friend went as Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings. They did trick or treat dressed as Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings. I don't think they've ever come back with more sweets than they did. So the story that we're going to turn our attention to next, and I may hit this junction on time and then introduce it properly afterwards, but it's a fairly straightforward question. You are more likely to be visited by a ghost if you are under 35 years old, and they tend to avoid the East Midlands. Keith thought he saw a ghost once. Did I ever tell you about this? But it was just Jacob Rees-Mogg waiting to appear on Nick's show. I want your stories. Just over 1 in 3 people in England say they believe in ghosts or the spirits of the deceased. That, again, in the olden days, I'd have got on my high horse about how ridiculous that is, but then I'd have gone to church on Sunday, and that would have left me open to accusations of hypocrisy and double standards as well. So all we're going to do, and we may not need a lengthy phone in here. 12:15 is the time. I just want the time. I want you to tell me about the time you saw a ghost. And I'm going to mark all stories out of 10 for spookiness, plausibility, and narrative arc. You know, storytelling. Storytelling. Is that right? Spookiness, plausibility, storytelling. And the prize... Oh, I don't know. We'll come up with some old toot. 0345 6060 973. I'll have a look through lost property. You can have one of Tom Swarbrick's old scarves. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need to tell me your ghost story. I'm not going to do a grown-up phone-in on why so many people believe in it. I reserve the right to ask you that question at the end of your story. If you genuinely scare me, then you can have 2 of Tom Swarbrick's old scarves. 0345 6060 973. The time you genuinely believe you saw a ghost. I don't want any time wasters. I don't want any salesmen. I don't want any... the time you genuinely believe you saw a ghost. Tell me the story. I'll mark you out of 10 for spookiness, plausibility and storytelling skills. Hit the numbers now. You will get through.
James O'Brien on LBC.
This is nice from Nick. Your daughter and her friend got it wrong, James. Cummings and Johnson would have been trick or trick. You're absolutely right. And this made me laugh from Daniel. I saw Ghost in 1990, 6 out of 10, not Patrick Swayze's best role. But I said no time wasters or jokers. This is a very serious conversation about the time what you saw a ghost. 0345 6060 973, inspired by a very serious story about the fact that 1 in 3 people in England, I don't know why they didn't extend the inquiry further, actually believe in the paranormal, and that includes magical beings, possession, spells, psychics, angels and demons. Did you know, I think I've told you this before, but you've probably forgotten, you know that my school was attached to a monastery? It actually had an exorcist. One of the monks was the official monastery exorcist. We weren't really ever supposed to know about this stuff. You get it quite a lot in religion, and it's usually, obviously, somehow attached to mental health, and there are some mental health conditions that can be portrayed as possession when they're anything of the sort. It still goes on in some congregations. But even in my time at school, and I left in 1990, one of the monks was the kind of charged with the official... So the film is based, as you'd imagine, the film and the book, The Exorcist, has some roots in reality. So it's easy to sit here scoffing, but an awful lot of established religions obviously have a spiritual... Well, they all have a spiritual dimension pretty much, bar Buddhism. The idea that you can carry on living after dying. The producer's come up with a brilliant idea. She thinks, and this is why I think she's angling for promotion, it must be time for the annual assessment. She thinks that when you're doing topics, it would be a really good idea to have some music, some really obvious pop music that is relevant to the topic that's under discussion. So, I don't know, if you were talking about parking tickets, you could perhaps play Drive by the Cars. So we're talking about ghosts. That's brilliant, Eleanor. Seriously, yeah. I mean, you're Employee of the Week this week. Sorry, Keith. Eleanor's just nudged the air. I bet all the other shows start doing that now. Every time they're doing a topic, they'll pick a really lazy song that sort of fits in with what the topic is. Oof. That's genius. That is Producer of the Year award coming your way. Oh yes, 20 minutes after 12 is the time. Okay, let's do it. Dee's in Tulse Hill. Dee, what have you got?
Hello, James.
Hello, Dee.
Right. I was a little girl. I do believe in ghosts.
Yes.
Story goes like this. I was a little girl. I was probably about 6 or 7, something like that. And we were going on a school trip the following day. Then I lived in Willenhall. I'm sure you know where that is.
Willenhall?
Yeah.
In the West Midlands?
In the West Midlands.
I do know it.
So we were going on a school trip from my school, Albion Road Junior School. And you know what children are like. You know, we don't sleep when that sort of thing is coming up.
Yes.
We're so excited. That's right. And so when I should have been asleep, I was awake. So I decided to go downstairs and meet my mum in the living room. As I was going down the stairs, all of a sudden the hairs on the nape of my neck just stood up. And I went, oh. So I turned around, and there was the tallest human being, well, looked like a human being, that I've ever seen in my life. He was holding the hand of a little boy. I don't know where the little boy comes into it, but anyway, there was this tall being. And
what was he wearing? What was he wearing?
Seemed like he was wearing a long sash.
Extra points for a robe.
You know, that sort of thing. And then, so I ran down the stairs, burst into the living room and started screaming, Mom, there's a ghost. And my mum said, a ghost? I went, yeah. So she thought, oh gosh, this child is so excited about the school trip, she's not sleeping. So she took me back upstairs, tucked me back into bed. And that was it. And we went on the trip the following morning, no problems. Now, moving forward, fast forward, I was now in my 20s. My mum was getting ready for work. She was a nurse.
Yeah.
She was on the afternoon shift, and she was getting ready for work. And she pulled out some photographs, and I just picked one out.
Yeah.
And my whole body just went cold. I had goosebumps everywhere. This was the same person that I saw at the top of the stairs. It was her dad, whom I had never met, by the way. My granddaddy had never met him, because he died before I was born anyway.
I mean, 8 out of 10 for spookiness.
Yes.
Do you know, I wrote down 664 before you got, because I thought you were finishing when you went to bed that night. No. But I'm changing it to 888.
Whoops.
I'm giving you 8 out of 10 for spookiness, 8 out of 10 for plausibility, and 7 out of 10 for storytelling, because it started a bit slow, frankly, before picking up.
Like a lot of films do these days, eh?
Well, you could have grabbed me sooner, frankly.
Oh.
But that is amazing. Wow. What did your mum make of it all? Just because I was going to suggest sleep deprivation and hallucination, but clearly not, because this photograph was the follow-up.
Yes, it was.
You'd probably seen the photograph and not realised, as a child. Yes.
I'd never seen the photograph.
No, you had. You probably
before.
had. No, you probably... No, yes.
James, don't argue with me when I'm arguing with you.
Sorry, Dee.
Right. I had never seen the photograph in my life. I'd never seen my grandfather. He died before I was born, and that was it. I never asked questions, and I was still I was little.
Yeah.
And so this was now years later, and I don't know where she pulled the photographs from anyway.
But you'd never seen it before?
I never in my entire life. I had never. Even talking about it now, I'm feeling like my body's shaking.
And that's it? You've not had any other experiences like that?
Oh, you want to know all of them?
No, I don't. I just wondered. I just wondered whether you had form in this field.
Form? Yes. You could say
well,
that.
Mate, that might mean that you're better. No, well done. I like that.
Jesus took me to heaven.
Did he?
I saw loads of people.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually saw one person that I still know till today. Thank God he's still alive.
Well, he wasn't in heaven then, was he?
No, then he was. God showed me some people who had not become, who had not given their lives to Jesus. And he showed me a whole group of
losing points, Dee.
No, I've told you my story.
Cut and run. Cut and run. Take it to the bank. 887. Could be an early lead. 25 after 12. Carrie is in Bromley. Carrie, what would you like to... What have you got for us?
Sorry, I'm shouting at my daughter.
No, don't mind me. You carry on, mate. You've got work to do. You've got parenting to do.
So, yeah, I have got a ghost story for you.
Yes.
Well, I think it was a ghost story. I was sleeping in... I can hear the radio in the background. Is that...
Turn it off.
No, it's not. I haven't got it on.
Oh, it's a ghost. It's a ghost radio.
So I was at my boyfriend's house,
Yeah.
and I was uncomfortable in his bed.
All right,
So
it's a family programme, Carrie.
No, it's a single bed. So
Okay.
I went into the other room, and I slept in his sister's bedroom.
Right.
And halfway through the night, I woke up, and there was a dark presence in the side of the thing.
It's a family programme, Carrie.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's nothing smutty. And then I felt a very heavy weight on me.
I'm not saying it again.
I know. And then I was dragged down the bed.
Whoa.
Right?
Okay.
By my ankles. I never told anyone about it. I left the house. It was very, very scary, but I never did anything about it. 20 years later,
Yeah.
I was sitting around the family table, and it's actually quite upsetting.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law had exactly the same story when I told it.
What, in the same house?
In the same house.
So you married this fella?
No, this is my brother-in-law.
No, but you married the boyfriend that you had at the time.
We've 20 years later, we're all sitting around the table.
Yeah, you missed out that bit of the story. So it's the same bed in the same room?
Yeah. He had the same story and he hadn't told anyone either.
Was he in the house when this happened to you?
No.
Oh.
No, this was a separate event.
I was going all Sherlock Holmes then. No, I know, but was he in another room?
No. It was just me and my boyfriend were there that night.
Yeah.
But he'd had the same experience in the same room.
Okay. That is 9 out of 10 for spooky, isn't it? Because it's two humans who are corroborating each other's story.
Exactly.
Yeah. Plausibility.
And he had told his wife, my boyfriend's
okay.
sister,
Plausibility
at
up
the
to
time.
9 as well. So you've got like independent verification.
Nobody had told anyone.
Whoa.
My sister-in-law looked at her husband with absolute shock.
Really?
And they had the same story had been told 20 years earlier.
I'm going to have to give you 7 for storytelling. Otherwise, you'd have won, and we've got another half an hour.
I know, I was a bit nervous.
No, that's fine. I've got to be brutal. You know, it's like Strictly Come Dancing.
Yes, no, that's fine.
So 997 for you.
Okay, fair enough.
That's pretty good, isn't it? I don't think anyone's going to get a 10.
Ringing in, I was super nervous, but I just had to tell you the story.
Okay, just for the benefit of people who would also like to ring in one day but think they'll be too nervous to do so, how have you found the experience?
Yeah, okay. I've never wanted to ring in before because of the nerves, but I just had to tell you the story.
There you go, and you've had a great time. And now you can get back to shouting at your daughter. Look on this as a brief hiatus. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, thanks.
There we go.
See you.
Thank you. It's coming up to 12:30. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. That was talking about compliments. I've had some lovely compliments lately, but this one from Jazz Beer is rather nice. It goes, James is on top form today. I thought Nick Abbott had come in early. I'll take that to the bank. I really will. Here's Tim Humphrey with the headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:32 is the time. Tracy knows. There is no greater compliment, she writes, than being compared to Nick Abbott. He is one of the funniest guys and he cheers me right up. And if you haven't experienced the Nick Abbott magic, then you can do so tonight from 10 o'clock on LBC and tomorrow from 10 o'clock on LBC and the day after, which is Sunday, all day from 10 o'clock on LBC. And sometimes they suggest I'm not a team player. Can you believe it? 12:32 is the time. Back to the ghosts. Michelle's in Wool. That's in Dorset, isn't it? Wool in Dorset.
It is.
Carry on, Michelle. What happened?
Hi. Good afternoon.
Hello.
So I used to work in a little village called Old Basing.
Yes.
Really small, very tiny. It's a Basing house where Cromwell used to be.
Oh,
and
yes.
Driving home from work, it was about 7:30, 8ish in the evening, just getting dark. And drove down this little lane over a little humpback bridge. And I slammed on my brakes. I thought I was just about to hit someone. And I could see just a pair of, don't laugh, just a pair of legs from the knee down.
Yeah.
Man's legs, because they were all hairy and chunky, with with a pair of kind of like weird brown leather sandally type shoes on.
Yeah.
And I panicked, slammed on my brakes. I used to have a little Mini, didn't stop that quickly.
So where were the legs?
They were literally about 3 meters, in front of my car.
Windscreen level?
Yes.
Just some legs?
Yes.
How far in front? 3 meters in front of the car? So floating in the air, almost?
No, they were walking, but because I was coming over the top of the humpback bridge, I think that maybe they were on the bridge, maybe.
Right. Walking towards you? Walking across the road?
No, walking across the road.
Okay.
From right to left.
God, that's frightening.
I didn't know what to do. I slammed on my brakes and stopped, and I thought, what do I do now? Do I get out and have a look?
Did you think you'd hit him?
I did. Well, no, because I didn't feel anything.
So no impact, but you went through the legs, so to speak.
I did. Yeah.
Wow.
And I was actually, for a while afterwards, a bit wary about driving home that way. But I believe I did some research afterwards. I only told my family. I didn't tell anyone else.
Yeah. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me.
Oh, thanks. And apparently, there's a high incidence of people seeing ghosts in that area. So,
but I mean, ghostly legs or more? Did anyone see the whole thing?
Other things. Some people have heard rattling. Some people believe they've had Civil War kind of type people that they've seen. So,
wow. Jane's picked up on one element of your story. She says, I'm a middle-aged woman and they could definitely have been my legs.
Oh. Oh, bless it. No, I'm sure they were male.
So they were ancient shoes, is what we're saying. They were like moccasins.
They were like a handmade type of leather. So nothing modern. And it was weird because the legs were bare.
Yeah. So probably like an ancient sort of yokel.
Maybe.
Of some, and there's that. I mean, I started quite high on the scoring. I felt a couple of people. So you're not gonna take the lead on this with your hairy legs.
Didn't expect
well, not your hairy legs, but your hairy legs, if you see what I mean. So I mean, for spookiness, it's only really a 6, that isn't it?
Okay.
You weren't? Were you scared? You weren't really scared, even, were you?
I was. I was young.
Well, you say that now.
I was 19.
Okay.
I was on my own in the car, and this particular bridge.
It couldn't have actually been a real person. What you haven't got, because I'm only going to give you 5 for storytelling, because you haven't made it clear how it was supernatural. It wasn't just a strangely dressed local crossing the road who hurried up just out of your vision, and you didn't hit him, and he scurried off into the undergrowth.
I stopped my car.
Yeah.
And I did have a look around, but I was young. I was on my own.
Yeah.
And I had driven over this bridge previously a bit too fast and left my fuel pump on the top of it, and I'd also scared myself that time.
Oh, fair enough.
So it was in the same area.
Right. Well, I'm being quite generous. I'm giving you 6 for spookiness, 5 for plausibility, and 5 for storytelling.
Oh, thanks.
That's brutal. Are you sure it wasn't Jacob Rees-Mogg crossing the road in his football shorts?
Oh. No, I can't imagine he would be able to grow that
could have been
much
a
hair.
Roman soldier.
That's exactly what it was like.
Oh, okay. Points going up now for plausibility, up to 7. Do you think it was a Roman soldier?
Do you know what? That's what it could have been like. They wear those funny leather things with straps up their ankles, don't they?
Exactly that. You saw a Roman soldier.
I'm going to have to do some more digging now to find out.
I think you are, yeah. Well, let me know what you find.
Thanks.
Cheers, Michelle. It is 12:37. Andrew is in Southend. Andrew, what happened?
Hi, James. Nice to speak to you.
Likewise.
So I was about 10 years old. It was the school summer holidays. My parents were out to work, and I was sitting downstairs having something to eat, and I heard footsteps upstairs.
Yeah.
So
was it a detached house?
Semi.
Yeah. Go on. Oh, we've already got a problem, but carry on.
But anyway, so I walked upstairs and I got to the top of the landing, and I heard the strangest sound that can only be described most closely, I guess, by the sound of 2 cats fighting.
Okay.
But this was like super loud in stereo, like through a pair of headphones, omnidirectional. Couldn't tell where it was coming from. Followed by my name, and I'll do it.
Followed by your name.
Followed by my name. So
Andrew.
So I'll do it for you.
Go on then.
Bear in mind, I'm only 10, and I'm scared out of my wits. I heard, Andy. So that was the sound. So then I ran down the stairs.
And you were in the house on your own?
I was in the house I believed I was in the house on my own.
Right.
I hadn't visited any of the rooms because this happened at the top of the landing.
Gosh.
So I ran down.
Do you have any
stairs.
siblings?
I did.
An older brother, perhaps?
We'll come to that.
Oh, all right. Go on then.
So
I said no time wasters and no jokers, Andy.
No, I won't. I won't. Right. This honestly is
proper
scary. So I ran down the stairs. I used the 5H1T swear word on every step.
Yeah.
Grabbed my dog and ran out of the house and headed towards the pub where my mum worked.
Yeah.
Crying all the way.
Proper terrified then.
Yeah. The only thing I'm thinking, possibly this could be my brother. Yeah. I didn't think anyone was in the house, but as you just pointed out, big brothers can be mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, as I'm running towards the pub, about halfway there, I see my brother and his friend walking towards me with their ladders on their shoulders because they were window cleaners.
Right.
I've told them what had happened, and we went and got my mum. My brother's friend Peter went to get his baseball bat from his house, thinking we must have a burglar. And we all went back to the house with the dog, both the boys, Peter with his baseball bat. They've run upstairs, couldn't find anything. Nobody in the house at all.
I like this story.
But the dog, the dog came in, wouldn't go upstairs, sat on the bottom step and started howling. This is a dog that had never howled before.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I don't believe in ghosts. I'm not religious. I just cannot explain it. I only tell you I was terrified.
I bet you were. I got one theory. Mike's got a theory.
Go on.
Could it have been a walkie-talkie?
Like I say, well, I mean, it was like I say. It was
your impression sounded like a walkie-talkie, but it may not have been a very good impression.
No, it was more like two cats fighting. That's the best. But it was omnidirectional and like super loud.
And it wouldn't be a walkie-talkie then, would it?
That would be.
And your brother was not like that because he'd have told you by now, wouldn't he? He'd have said, actually, 5 years later, that was us. That was me and Pete.
Yeah,
we were outside with our ladders. We were shouting through the bathroom window.
He's 59 now. I'm 54. So no, we would have had that conversation.
And we're 100% confident it wasn't two cats having a fight.
Well, not unless they were on the landing next to me. No.
Okay, this is my favourite. Actually, Dee's going to be cross. I'm going to give you 9 for spookiness because of that little bit where your brother appears, and that just makes you absolutely lose it, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
And then
I wouldn't even go back into the house.
Plausibility. So I'm going to have to open up that. So I'm going to, if I give you 2 9s and an 8. 2 9s and an 8, because at first I thought you were yanking my chain, and it was going to be your brother was under the bed or something like that. So you're ahead. You could be winning. You could be winning whatever it is I find in the lost property box if you play your cards right. If you carry on like this, 12. Thank you. 12:41 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Jeff's in Croydon. Jeff, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Jeff.
Okay, let's go back to 1978. I was about 14 years old.
Yeah.
Laying in my bed, and I was listening to John Peel. It was just coming to an end, so it would have been around 12 o'clock.
Excellent choice.
It was back in them days. Got up, used the bathroom. As I walked in, turned off the light, laid on my bed, and as I looked to my right, 6 foot away, there was a chair that I used to keep there with my clothes on.
Oh, yeah.
But instead of the clothes was a man.
What?
And he was sitting looking out the window. Now, the window only had curtains on it, not net curtains, and it was a full moon that night, near enough. So the room was lit up, and I'm sitting there looking at this man, and I thought it was my dad. So I got up, and I leant over to where he was, right next to him, looking out the window. And I said to him, Dad, what are you looking at? Is someone in the garden? And I'm looking out, and I can't see anything. I said, someone trying to break in?
Yeah.
And as I turned and looked at him, by this time he's only 12 inches away from me. I'm looking at his face. I then sort of stood up and realised it wasn't my dad. It looked like him. He had the same sort of hair, same sort of ears, and he was solid.
What sort of ears did he have?
Quite big ones.
Okay.
Because my dad had big ears.
Yeah, carry on.
And I stood up and I looked at him and I said, Dad? Yeah. And he didn't move. He was just constantly looking out the window, and I put my hand out in the dark to find the light switch, and I hit the light switch and he'd gone. Nothing was there. So I stood there and I looked around and I thought, this is quite cool. I didn't scare me. I was really just blown away by it all. Told my parents in the morning, and they sort of nodded as if to say they knew something. It was 2 weeks later when I was laying in bed, listening to the radio, and there was a knock on my door. Half the door is glass.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see anyone standing on the other side, and so I just said, come in. And the door opened up 3/4 and stopped in front of me, and there was no one there. I got up, I walked into the hallway, I looked down one end into the darkness, and my parents were in bed because the door was closed. I looked to the other side, and the door was closed where my brother would be sleeping, and there was no one there whatsoever.
But could it not have been a draft?
No, there was no windows open. And to open the door, it actually dragged along the carpet.
Oh, okay. Did you have a brother, siblings?
One brother, he was asleep down in the other end.
You think he was? He might have had a long piece of string or something.
No. And, so sort of ever since then, for the last 30 years, I've been a paranormal investigator, and I've been out there and filmed lots of strange things.
What's your biggest scoop? What's the one you're proudest of? The one that is the most impressive?
I would probably say a young girl that was being bruised and scratched in her bedroom while she slept. We was asked to go in to find out what was there. And when I asked the question, what you're going to do, what do you want with the girl, I had a digital recorder rolling. There was a voice, I played it back, and it said, effing killer. And we found out that she had been using a Ouija board down the graveyard. We got the evidence, done the investigation, contacted the PA to the Bishop of Churches. The PA to the Bishop of Churches sent round the local reverend to bless the child and the whole property.
That gets 10 out of 10 for spookiness, doesn't it? Why didn't you tell that story?
I don't. Well, because I'm a paranormal investigator now. When I was 14, that's what led me to be a paranormal.
No, I know, but you were gonna come bottom a minute ago. You were on 443, and now you've just got 10 for 10 for spookiness, 9 for plausibility. Well, 10 for plausibility because you flipping recorded it. So I'm going to have to give you 2 for storytelling.
Oh,
you'd have been home and dry if you'd started with that story.
Well, I've got probably about 3,000 investigations that I've done, so there's plenty more.
Can I ask your opinion on something?
Yeah, sure.
You know, Eleanor's come up with this idea that when we are discussing a subject, we should play some really predictable and lazy music that sort of fits with the topic under discussion. Just out of interest, what do you think of that idea, Jeff, the paranormal investigator?
Yeah, why not?
James O'Brien on LBC.
Please all of the people, all of the time, part 466. Joel's been in touch to say, James, this is your best phone in to date, but now I'm blanking my pants. This is the... hi, James, loving the show today. Absolutely cracking show today. Thank you, Owen. I've got more. I am flipping loving this hour, says Tracy. Eleanor's just put the cherry on the top of the cake. And then Dougie's been in touch to say, this is the worst hour of radio you've ever hosted. Which I challenge, frankly. Did you not hear we did parking tickets once. And we did an hour on buses that I was very proud of, but literally everybody else thought was rubbish. We did something the other day when the first half an hour was absolutely awful, Dougie. I don't think you've been paying attention, mate. This is nowhere near the worst hour of radio that I've ever hosted. But you ask a valid question. What are you doing next week when God talked to me? Write that down, Keith. Write that down. 12:50 is the time. Jimmy Wales on Full Disclosure this week, the founder of Wikipedia. Lovely bloke and fascinating story when you think about it. You go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in the space of a relatively short amount of time. I think the clip we'll play looks at the very moment that he realised Wikipedia could probably lay claim to having changed the world. It certainly changed my world. And I'll play you that clip shortly. And I've also got a special announcement to make. which I don't think I've made before. And it is the person who will be my guest on stage at the Royal Geographic Society for the live recording, the special annual live episode of Full Disclosure, which we do, of course, to raise money for Global's Make Some Noise, LBC's official charity. And I've asked you a couple of times if I've told you before. I don't want you to guess. If you wanted to say that you... That you do actually remember me saying who it was, then but anyway, most people weren't paying attention if I have said it before, but it's beginning to look as if I actually haven't. A couple more ghost stories before that, because it's Halloween, all right? It's turned into one of those topics that, as I've pointed out to you many times in the past, it's not hard to get the phones to ring. If you're not asking very interesting questions about very interesting subjects. It turns out, have you ever seen a ghost is now up there with have you ever got a parking ticket that you never deserved? With the crucial difference being that so far, every story's actually been really interesting, unless you're Dougie, who thinks it's a load of rubbish. And, to each their own. Jack's in Bristol. Jack, what happened?
Can I set the scene?
Yeah, of course.
All right.
There's points for storytelling, Jack. You have to set the scene.
Right, okay, well, don't worry about that. January 2012, midst of winter, okay? Yeah. I live in an old stately home, which needed £250,000 to kind of be done up. My best friend inherited the house, but they didn't have the money to do it up. But it was in a place in North Somerset. The village, can I say what the village was called?
Yeah, why not?
It's called Backwell.
Okay.
And the reason Backwell was called Backwell, because there was a wishing well in the garden of this stately home, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So the whole village was sort of centred around this old place. She entices me in by going, do you want to live all in £300, all in a mansion?
Yeah.
I was like, why not? It's going to be fantastic.
Too much scene setting, Jack. Hurry up.
Oh, okay, fine. She ends up, like, the day I move in, getting with a boyfriend. So then I'm living there all on my own in this terrifying mansion where for some reason there's just skulls of deer lying around.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's normal for the aristocracy, mate. Trust me. Carry on.
Well, anyway, I have to just pass the time and just not get overwhelmed by how creepy this place is. I'm in my room and the carpet is very high piled. And I had a very big oak door that you'd have to really yank to get into your room. Right? Okay, hang on. And I was just there in my room. There's no draft anywhere. And that door just suddenly just goes, opens on its own. There is no humanly way that door, because of the high pile carpet, that it would just go, open up. But it was just so overwhelming. I just had to be, I'm not allowed to be scared by that. So I had nothing else to entertain myself apart from Radio 2 before I discovered LBC. So I had the likes of...
Couldn't get us in Somerset back then.
No, exactly. No. And so I had to just have the radio on to keep my mind, at bay. But then other things happened, like paintings would just... There were some really creepy old paintings everywhere, and they just fall off the wall.
Is that it? Is that... I mean, is the door opening that's your kind of highlight?
Well, you told me to hurry up. I've got other anecdotes.
Well, no, you can't. You're only allowed one. You open with your strongest. Although I grant you, the last fella missed out the Ouija board and went instead with the knock on the door. But generally speaking, you'd open with your best joke or line.
Well, unfortunately, I've got no one to verify this.
That doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 for storytelling.
Are you joking?
All right, 2. I'm going to give you 3 for spookiness.
This is humiliating.
Wait, no, it gets better. I'm going to give you 10 for plausibility because no one would have made that up.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Have a great day. It's 12:55. Let's have a little listen to this week's Full Disclosure with the founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales. And this is the moment. It's a very serious point at which he realised this idea that he'd come up with was actually turning into something that would change the world. 2001, Wikipedia goes live. What went live that day, Jimmy? What exactly went live?
So the software. Then I downloaded a open source Perl script. It was I used that software because it existed and it was one script to install. And I typed "Hello World," which was the first words in Wikipedia, which is a thing that programmers always do when you learn a new programming language. You make a program to print out "Hello World," which just shows you know how to get it running and you can print something out. So I just typed "Hello World." I wasn't really trying to be poetic, but now it does feel like that's kind of poetic for Wikipedia to say "Hello World." And, there wasn't much there. But, as I say, like we had a community who existed trying to build Newpedia, and the process was too hard and not fun. And they just were like, oh, okay, let's turn in. And so people started writing things and,
How quickly? I mean, when did you realise it? So that was January. When did you think this could be absolutely epic?
Well, I mean, there were a couple of moments. I remember Larry wrote a letter to
your
me.
Co-founder.
Who said, wow, actually, after I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but something like, after 3 months, we've already got this many. I think by the end of the year, we could have 3,000 or 4,000. I mean, by the end of the year, we had 20,000. Like, it was much better than that. I'm making them all. I haven't looked at this for years, but it was something like that. And but there were a couple moments. One, September 11th, 2001, when the terrorist attacks happened in the U.S. That was a moment when I knew there was something interesting and different, because on that day there was a lot of activity on the site of people, writing about what had happened in Wikipedia. And, if you turn on the TV that day, what you saw were bewildered pundits, because nobody knew anything, but they had to fill the air, You saw the video of the planes going in the towers over and over. A lot of fear, a lot of concern, a lot of speculation. Meanwhile, on Wikipedia, people were they were expanding the article about the World Trade Center, the building, like who was the architect who made it, and really background information. Wow. That was kind of hard to come by that day. Yes. And I was like, oh, that's different. Like, that's interesting.
Well, that's like a live history book.
Like a live history book, yeah.
Not an encyclopedia.
Yeah, well, except they were filling in stuff because we were so small, we didn't have it. So it was kind of encyclopedic information you would expect. Yeah. And we've seen the same, like in, I forget what year it is now, but there was the big tsunami in the South Pacific. Yeah. And, like the villages that were impacted, we had very small articles in Wikipedia. So people were like, oh, let's write more about that. Like, people are going to be very curious, like, oh, what are these people like? What are their lives like?
And this would surprise you and delight you. I mean, not the tsunami, that's hideous.
Yeah.
But
it's great, like, to say, like, oh, right, like, this is the kind of information that people wonder about, is the kind of information that we're going to put out there. And that's actually cool and really interesting.
As indeed is that interview, and I think I'm allowed to say that. Jimmy Welser, the founder of Wikipedia. The time is 12:58, and that is almost it for this week, but all that remains is some rather important business. I'd like to invite you to join me for a special live episode of my chart-topping podcast, Full Disclosure. You can expect unfiltered, honest conversation with dedicated Q&A time for you to put questions to us both me and my guest. And it's at the Royal Geographic Society in London on the 19th of February, that's a Thursday. You can be part of the live event. All money raised will go to LBC's official charity Make Some Noise. And I'm delighted to tell you that the guest on Full Disclosure in 2026 is Nadine Dorries. No, I'm only joking. It's footballing and broadcasting legend Gary Lineker, who will be live on stage with me in London on Thursday, the 19th of February, 2026. To buy your tickets, and I've got to tell you, they're going to go very, very quickly, then head to the LBC app or indeed to lbc.co.uk. That's me and Gary Lineker live on stage. Talk about crossing the streams. The Daily Mail will probably have had an embolism already. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app, where you can stay up to date on the top stories and opinions, put your news categories in the order you want, pause and rewind live radio, and listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily and indeed Full Disclosure. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
James O'Brien on LBC.